It is Hump Day. Happy Wednesday. Thank you for joining us here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Across from me is the super talented, fabulous producer, Carlene Bragg.
Hi, everyone. Hi.
Hey, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I can't complain.
Yeah?
I always say that. Somebody, one of the guys in my run group said, man, you sound like an old man.
You always say can't complain.
Can't complain. I look, hey.
It's a solid response.
The old man, there is a gray hair somewhere. Do you see the gray hair?
No, I don't see it.
You don't see it?
No.
Okay, I'll show you when we get a break.
Young and vibrant.
I take that. I receive that. I am young.
Yes,
I may
you
have
are.
some old sayings, but I'm young. Oh, look, we have a busy show for you today. There's a lot happening this afternoon, as always. Yeah. That's why you need to leave your TV on, the Live Impact News on WCNC Plus, because we have it all. We have weather coming up in the next hour. Mm-hmm. But first, we want to get to a news conference that's happening live in El Paso. This is a look at it right now. So El Paso Border Patrol is holding a press conference. This event is to discuss the increased border enforcement measures known as the, quote, Deep South campaign, and to provide more information on the designated national defense areas. Let's take a listen in to what's being said right now.
And working with Border Patrol agents. Yeah, as a battalion commander in charge of the soldiers that I have working within the NDA and outside the NDA with Border Patrol, my purpose is 100% operational control of the southern border. Anything that talks about U.S. civilians coming into the NDA, I would probably have to give that up to the Department of Defense or Installation Management Command that owns the NDAs, such as Fort Bliss and Fort Huachuca.
Sure, thanks. I appreciate the question. So anything that has to do with land ownership, policy, or those processes or procedures that are deciding on where those boundaries are, I would defer you to U.S. Army Installation Command. I can get with you after this and provide you with a point of contact who can provide information about that.
No, so I believe those signs do face the river for sure. I believe they're often attached or very close to a 30-foot bollard wall that's in that area. There are some gates and gaps. They're posted every 100 meters, give or take. So I do feel that it is obvious that you're in an area that you should not expect or have any reasonable belief that is a hospitable area to affect an illegal entry. It's not a welcoming sight to have the concertina wire, to have the DOD and Border Patrol resources deployed in that area, and to have an 18 to 30 foot border barrier in that area. With these signs posted, every 100 meters, I feel like the message is there. Do not cross illegally, and you are entering into an area that you shouldn't be in. Want to speak to that?
The question was respect to the exact numbers of people that have been charged thus far. Do I understand it correctly? So in New Mexico, it is in excess of 500. And that number does continue to go up. We continue to bring these national defense area related charges, and they are in various postures in court. And we continue to take it day by day and evaluate it case by case. With respect to one thing that I did want to mention, as you know, there is a high level of recidivism when it comes to border crossing. And so each and every person that is apprehended in a national defense area is put on notice of the fact that they have stepped into a national defense area. They are advised by Border Patrol that they have stepped into a national defense area. They're shown a form, they sign a form, that form goes into their immigration file. And so the next time they cross the border unlawfully, there's going to be no issue as to whether or not they were on notice about stepping into a national defense area, regardless of whether they saw the sign or not, because they had previously been on notice and had to sign a document acknowledging that they knew that they had stepped into a national defense area. And so as we continue to move forward with these prosecutions and we start dealing with recidivist crossers, I think you'll see these cases getting to the finish line in a much quicker fashion.
Sí, muchas gracias y agradecido la pregunta. No vamos a hablar de números de agentes, ni números de equipo, ni nada que está en el área conocido por el NDA. Esa es una respuesta que tiene que ver con la seguridad de los oficiales y de los soldados que está operando en esa área. Pero tenemos los mismos elementos trabajando diariamente, 24 horas al día, 365 días al año en esas áreas y también en el resto de la frontera, desde Brownsville, Texas, hasta San Diego, California.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Right there, you're watching a live press conference from El Paso, Texas. El Paso Border Patrol, they're holding a press conference there. This event is to discuss the increased border enforcement measures known as the, quote, Deep South campaign. All right, so we want to shift away from that. So we'll keep an eye on that. We want to shift away from that. We want to take you to a trial we've been covering for weeks now. It is week 8 of the Karen Reed trial. This should give you a little bit of a backstory. Karen Reed is charged with second-degree murder, manslaughter while operating a vehicle under the influence and leaving the scene. She is accused of striking John O'Keefe, her police officer boyfriend, with her SUV back in 2022. And leaving him to die alone in the snow outside of a house party in Canton, Massachusetts. Now, today, as you see right here, this is a live look inside the courtroom. The defense team's final witness returns today. And this trial started this morning, so we're midway through the day with this. Well, so this is defense crash expert Andrew Rensler. He is a biomedical engineer from ARCCA, and he was testifying yesterday when the day wrapped up. Again, back on the stand today, the defense said he is their final witness, and Reed said on yesterday that she will not testify on her own behalf. So he is right there on the stand. That is crash reconstruction expert Andrew Rensler there on the stand. Let's take a listen into what he has to say.
Doesn't it?
Well, it depends on the testing you do. If you want to see how it shatters, and if you're claiming that it shattered in a certain way to cause a certain injury, if you don't have any peer-reviewed evidence, if you don't have any research, then you have to do the testing, because you can't just say, well, it's possible it could shatter this way and cause that injury. That's not conclusive. You can't use that to come to an opinion about what happened.
Oh, that wasn't what I was asking you. I was asking you if you have seen in cases that when plastic breaks, it breaks differently.
Yeah. Well, sure. I mean, the testing we've done here, the taillights covers fractured differently, and we didn't get any contact. So I have personal experience just with this case alone.
We'll get to the contact. When you looked at all the tests you did, the plastic broke differently in each and every case, every experiment, didn't it?
Sure, it's broken like that, and I've never seen a case where you get these types of abrasions.
Oh, I didn't ask you that. Is that funny?
No, it's not funny.
Okay.
So I'm going to strike the comment. Next question. Next question, Mr. Brennan. No more comments.
When you did your experiments, the sizes of plastic that broke were different in each experiment, weren't they?
They were, yes.
The number of breaks in each experiment were different, weren't they?
They were, yes.
The angles of the break changed from piece to piece, experiment to experiment, didn't they?
I'm sure they did.
Did you watch the videos and watch the damage and take a look and count how many pieces broke in each experiment?
I didn't specifically count, no. We looked at contact to the sleeve and to the dummy itself.
You never counted the broken pieces in each experiment?
I did not. There was no need to.
Not a matter if there's a need, did you?
I did not, no, sir.
Okay. You had talked quite a bit about Dr. Welcher's test with the paint, so I want to ask you some questions about that. Were you ever under the impression that Mr. Welcher, you can take that down, please. Were you ever under the impression that Dr. Welcher was trying to reenact the actual collision when he did that blue test?
Objection, Your Honor. I'm going to allow it.
Well, that was the only test he performed, and he referenced that test for his opinion that the position and orientation of the lacerations are consistent with the taillight cover. So if that test was not intended to signify or demonstrate the position of the arm, he has no evidence to say the position and orientation of the arm in the lacerations, which are abrasions, are consistent with the taillight cover. That's the only test he did. So if it doesn't represent that, it's really meaningless in his analysis and conclusions.
Now that you've shared your opinions, can I get back to my question?
Sustained. So, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Brent, all right, I'm going to see counsel at sidebar.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sertivant. Got Chippy there on the stand right there with Andrew Wentzler. He's a crash reconstruction expert who's on the stand, defense's final witness there. But again, it get a little chippy, so they're having a sidebar.
It's been chippy a little bit for a while now.
And that's what happens when you get down to the wire with a trial like this, a nationally known trial like this. So we're going to shift away from that as soon as that comes up, and if time allows, we'll get back to that trial. But we want to get to another story. So the city of Charlotte is setting new goals to become a cleaner, greener place to live with a big focus on climate and energy. Earlier this morning, our Ben Thompson and Lisa Washington spoke to Heather Bolick, about how this energy focus can impact your neighborhoods. Take a listen into that interview from this morning.
This morning, we are joined here on WCNC Plus by Heather Bolick with the city of Charlotte to talk about what this means for you, your family, and your neighborhood. Heather, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. This is all part of what's called the Strategic Energy Action Plan Plus. So break us down. We know the City Council just passed this. What is it? What are some of these goals?
Yeah, so we have updated our Strategic Energy Action Plan. We call it the Strategic Energy Action Plan Plus. And basically, we originally adopted our Strategic Energy Action Plan in 2018, but as we build plans, we want to make sure that we are still building towards the future. And so we wanted to take a look at our plan and see, gauge our progress and make sure that we're integrating our recent strategic plans, like our comprehensive plan and our strategic mobility plan and others, to make sure that we're integrating all these great, really strategic plans and moving together. And so we are doing that. We added what we call a climate risk assessment, which basically let us know what our biggest risks are in terms of climate change. And so we found that our biggest risk is really extreme heat. And so we found that our biggest change here from the 1960 to 1990 timeframe to now, we've seen a 300% increase in high heat days. And so that is something that we are really looking at how to combat. We are also looking at updating our focus areas. So in the past, we had looked at, and we are still keeping a strong focus on buildings and transportation and energy generation. But we're also including a new focus area because we really listened to our community. And even though it is the Strategic Energy Action Plan, our community really cares about reducing waste and reducing, water waste.
So, Heather, you talked about how this builds on the previous plan, and you talked about those high heat days. That sounds like a lot more hot days.
I know, it's not just our imagination.
Right. I'm hearing you say that. I'm also thinking about just how much the city is growing. Is any of that taken into account, just how rapidly, the population of the Charlotte Metro is increasing when you think about this and the energy?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we have we've also added a renewable energy goal. And so before we did not have any goals around renewable energy for our community, but we've added a 600 megawatt renewable energy goal. And so the way that we are asking the community to tackle that is this month we are launching Solarize Charlotte Mecklenburg in partnership with Mecklenburg County. County and the town of Davidson. And so anyone in Mecklenburg County can participate in this program. And it's what it really is a group purchasing campaign. And so the more people participate, the more the price of the solar and storage, if you would like to have battery storage or energy storage at your home, the price comes down. And so what that means is you have more distributed energy, and that then brings the peak load for Duke Energy down, which benefits everyone.
Heather, bring this down for the folks listening right now on WCNC Plus having breakfast. Bring this down to a family level for the mom at home right now, juggling kids and a mortgage and a job right now. Why is something like this important?
Yeah, so I am that mom. I have 2 school-age kids and a job, and so I totally understand that. And the reason that it's really important to me is for them and for the children that I hope one day we'll have. It's really about clean air and clean water and a better future for all of us. And I just really want us all to lean into what we can do in each of our individual spots. So one of the things that I talk about is around the different parts of your life. So what can the community do? What can each of us do in the 3 parts of our lives? What can we do at home? What can we do at work? And what can we do in our community? So I think about what can you do at work. So the City of Charlotte has a program called Power Down the Crown, which is basically what we call a voluntary benchmarking program. And so it's similar to how a car has a miles per gallon, so how efficient a car is. Buildings also have that. It's called basically the energy usage per square foot. And so we put that energy efficiency of the building on a dashboard and help everyone bring their energy efficiency down. So encouraging your business, or if you're a business owner, to come with us and benchmark your building energy usage. And then in your community, so volunteering to clean up our streams, and working with at the Innovation Barn with all the different circular economy nonprofits that work there. Also, at your home, do things like participating in Solarize. Do things like weatherization of your home, so sealing around your windows and doors. Those are all things that you can do to make a difference.
So it's about bringing down that energy usage level and just being mindful wherever you are, at home or at work. We saw briefly the thermostat there, so I know that's an issue for a lot of people. We're going into the summer months. Everybody likes it cool, 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 but maybe if you think about not having it as cool, something along those lines.
That's right. And I know the plan promotes both private and public efforts, and there are examples of that already playing out.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we are working on is we have an 80 megawatt solar farm that we're working through a solar developer to build in Davidson County that's going to be offsetting our energy usage. That is awesome. We also, with our Power Down the Crown program, we've with the Charlotte Business Journal, we have a new sustainability award as a part of the Great Places to Work, and maybe you've heard of the Great Places to Work award. So we're excited to recognize businesses out there that are doing great work. So yeah.
All right, Heather Bullock, letting us know how the Queen City is getting cleaner and greener.
That's right.
Which is always a good thing. All right.
Heather, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
All right, so that was a cool initiative and a cool interview there this morning with our stream from 7 and 9. So let's shift gears for a second. Let's go out to Washington, D.C., because right now there is a press conference happening live. Here's a live look. So this is a press conference held by a variety of lawmakers and immigration experts, DACA recipients, to mark the 13th anniversary of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, also known as DACA. That program, amidst threats of mass deportation. You see this press conference live. I'm sure you're familiar with the ICE protests on the West Coast in Los Angeles that are happening. But again, this press conference is happening as we mark the 13th anniversary of the DACA program. So let's take a listen in to what's being said right now.
Over 7 Americans support citizenship for people like me. They want us to stay. They see us as part of this country because that's what we are. It's Congress. In many ways, I really got lucky. I came to the U.S. at the right time, at the right age, and at the right year. But many others didn't. Some never qualified for DACA because they were too young when Trump froze the applications in 2017. They were ready to apply, they were eager to apply just like I was when I was young, and I wanted to just be normal. And they're still waiting because that door got slammed and hasn't reopened since. That was not only cruel, it was reckless. We are running on borrowed time. I am more scared today at the age of 31 with a degree in biology from the University of Florida, speaking 3 languages, than when I first came and barely spoke English. The courts can't decide our futures forever. Congress must deliver what we've been promised for years, a pathway to citizenship, stability, and dignity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariana. Up next, we have Todd Schultz, president of Forward.us.
So I'm going to be brief. It's an honor to be here. And I think we stand here today, and it's absolutely critical that anybody listening understand the thing that you can do is make clear, not just has worked and been incredible success, but that DACA shows why giving people that certainty, that legal status, that ability to work and live your life with just a little bit more certainty every day, single day is absolutely critical for them, and it's critical for our entire country. And if you look at what's happening in Los Angeles, that is made clear at its core. There is no that has more of the ability to status. Have lived in this country for decades. Congresswoman said the average DACA recipient came to this country at the age of 6 and is a quarter century. For a second. People who came here on average at the age of 6, who have lived here for no that has more of the ability to status. Have lived in this country for decades. Congresswoman said the average DACA recipient came to this country at the age of 6 and is a quarter century. For a second. People who came here on average at the age of 6, who have lived here for a quarter century. And DACA has, over the last 13 years, helped over 1 million people do extraordinary things. Get a degree in biology and also do very normal, boring things that many of us take for granted. What does it look like to wake up and not have to worry about, is it worth risking driving my kid to school? And when we look to Los Angeles and we see these efforts, let's be clear what they are. They are efforts to take a failed immigration system and weaponize it to sow fear and chaos and to provoke. And there is no good system when there are people who have for decades been locked out of the ability to earn status. At its core, the thing that DACA has shown all of us is that giving people the ability to work and live legally is the right step. It is the step in the right direction. Not just for DACA recipients and not just for dreamers, but for everyone here. And that's not going to happen today. We should be clear about that. But we have to do what we can to make that tomorrow. Were DACA to go away, the economic consequences would be devastating. But in the absence of that sort of status, it gives this president the ability to say, I am going to go into courthouses for people who are trying to follow the law. I'm going to go to a Home Depot. I'm going to go and try to stoke as much fear and division as possible. And we should push back against that. There is no excuse for weaponizing a failed immigration system. But DACA shows, the unbelievable, tremendous success of DACA shows that taking people out of that, giving people permanent status, which DACA is not, but it's a step in that direction. Giving people that permanent status is not just good for them, but it reduces the ability to demagogue. It creates economic opportunity for everyone. And so as we sit here today and we see so much of what's going on, these efforts to stoke division and fear, yes, it's been an unbelievable success for DACA. And yes, we need a dream out. But this is also the thing, the path forward needs to be not just a question of what we're seeing in Los Angeles and not just a question of fear and division, but why a pathway to citizenship and permanent legal status. All immigrants who are building their lives here is the right way to go. So it's an honor to work alongside DACA recipients who will not be able to work. And I just want to say, I hope we can look at a moment of pain and darkness that we should aspire to. So it's awesome to be here today. I hope we can hold on to this and hold this here. So thank you.
Bravo!
Thank you so much, Todd. Up next, we have Homie's here partner at the National Immigration Law Center. Woo!
Hi, everyone. I am really grateful to be here with you all to celebrate DACA's 13th anniversary. DACA is a teenager. Woo! My name is Dinah Pliego, and I am a senior campaign strategist at the National Immigration Law Center, but I'm also a former DACA recipient. I had DACA almost my whole adult life. And I feel so incredibly privileged to have been a recipient of the many life-changing things that I could have only obtained because of DACA. Because of DACA, I was able to go to college and complete my education. DACA brought me and my entire family of 6 out of poverty. It allowed me to work in jobs that aligned with my goals and ambitions. It allowed me to obtain my driver's license and drive to work without fear of a traffic stop going wrong and sending me to a country that I don't know. It allowed me to ultimately be where I am today. But I also want to share today a little bit about Daniel, a DACA recipient that I recently met who is also grateful to DACA and is a shining example of what DACA can open doors to. Because of DACA, Daniel was able to go to college. He became an Archer Fellow in Washington, D.C. and interned at the Embassy of Mexico in a law firm where he helped children apply for asylum. He worked on criminal justice reform, interpreted for victims of trauma, and taught ESL to custodians on his campus. Every single step of the way, Daniel has tried to give back more than he was given. And he is still trying to give back to his community. And all that he has accomplished and will accomplish would not have been possible without DACA. What breaks my heart is that Daniel lives in Texas, where soon he may not be able to get a work permit with his DACA thanks to a politically motivated lawsuit attacking the program. And I can relate to this uncertainty this leaves him with, because I too felt for many years the possibility of DACA going away. It was a constant horror on the horizon. We've been fighting to keep DACA and for a permanent solution for years, and still the only certainty that tens of thousands of Texans like Daniel face is that now they are likely to lose what has allowed them to make great strides and contribute to the communities where they live. This is unacceptable. So on today, on Sunday, on DACA's 13th anniversary, I want us to celebrate all the wonderful things that DACA has done for our communities. But I also want us to remember one very important thing. DACA is not enough. It never has been and it never will be. We need legislation. We need the Dream and Promise Act. And I cannot think of a more urgent time than right now. Over the past several weeks, we have seen our communities under attack in unprecedented ways. We are witnessing violent abuses of power in Los Angeles, California, and communities around the country. The images from this weekend and the past few weeks are in replay in my head. As I have tried to lay down to sleep this week, I have not.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sertivant. Right there, you're watching a press conference that's happening in Washington, D.C., right outside of the Capitol. They are talking about or marking rather the 13th anniversary of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, also known as the DACA program. And this comes amidst threats of mass deportation. And those concerns, again, that press conference is happening live with lawmakers from Washington, D.C., also immigration experts and DACA recipients. So that's happening there. On your top right, there is a hearing happening. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is testifying on the fiscal year 26 budget. That is happening on the top right. And right there below, make sure you just keep your TV on all day. Brad Panovich, Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich, it just launched it this week. Very exciting stuff. You don't want to miss it. Live weather impact on WCNC Plus at 6:30. Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich is giving us the ins and outs of everything, ups and downs,
turns and roundabouts,
See, this is why I got Carlene here. Don't miss that show. Speaking of weather, I don't have any complaints today, guys. I'm out. I'm done.
It's a first.
Becca, don't look so surprised.
We're all cheering. She's as happy as I am.
It is hot, but it's what it's expected in June, mid-June.
That's right. By June standards, today's going to be pretty nice. Yeah.
It's look, I can't.
You like pretty nice.
I like pretty nice.
Yeah.
Pretty nice is pretty cool.
I wouldn't go as far as to say delightful, but it feels better.
Beggars can't be choosers. We'll take pretty nice.
Right. It is a non-complaint day from Nick Sturdivant.
Wow.
Would you say it's an A+?
Says something.
I would say it's a A-.
Okay.
A-.
Okay.
We need to have like a graphic of like my face on Chris's pick of the week, or like I should have my own.
Chris mentioned this morning that he's like, if there's PNGs out there, if your face on it, and I'll make a graphic with you on it. So now you got to tell him. You want the Nick Sturdivant grade? Grade of approval?
Great.
I like that.
I can't say pick of the week because that's Chris's thing.
That's Chris's thing.
I'm gonna come up with a clever name, and we're gonna get on it, Becca.
Sounds good. Yeah. Well, today's going to be great.
Okay.
Any outdoor activities, definitely keep them. We'll have a mix of sunshine and clouds, and those dew points have come down a lot. It's still a little bit humid out there, but compared to the next 5 days, this is definitely going to be the pick. Live like outside across the Carolinas, you can see from our Mr. Sparky Carolina Cam Network, a mix of sunshine and clouds. Some areas dealing with a couple of puffy cumulus clouds out there. Certainly not going to be putting a damper on this Wednesday afternoon, but temperatures are definitely responding to that sunshine. It is going to be a very seasonable day ahead. Outside currently over towards Lake Norman, 84, 82 in Statesville, 82 in Lincoln, up to around 76 in Boone, and 73 out the door over in Jefferson. But factoring the heat index value, what it actually feels like as you step outdoors, definitely starting to get a little bit sticky for our most southern counties. That is over towards Chirac, feeling more like 90, feeling like 88 in Rockingham, but only feeling like 85 here in Charlotte. And that is thanks to some slightly drier air that is really set up from the mountains all the way into the metro area. Got a couple of thunderstorms right now that are alongside this cold front that continues to push across the Carolinas. And alongside this cold front is where we're going to have the potential to see a couple of isolated thunderstorms. But you'll notice it's really only for our most southern and our most eastern counties. It's really just going to be a dry and pretty quiet day from the mountains all the way into the Piedmont. So timing this out for you, again, an isolated chance for a thunderstorm, especially over towards Rockingham and Chesterfield County. And this will fizzle out pretty quickly as we lose that daytime heating later on tonight. By the time we get to Thursday, we've got more tropical air that's headed up our way. And this is what's going to produce the typical summertime-like storms that we see for this time of year. Hit or miss scattered activity starting through the afternoon hours, could even linger into early Friday morning, and that is going to be the picture from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all the way into Monday. So something that we will definitely have to get used to. here's our setup with that. Stationary front eventually pushes off to the south. You can see that high pressure system sitting above us now, and that's what's providing some of that slightly drier air across the area. That's going to go away quickly as this Bermuda high pressure system. This is east of the Carolinas, and this is what's going to bring the warm and tropical air across the southeast and the Carolinas. That Bermuda high is a staple of the summer, and it's what's going to bring us all of that moisture as we head into Thursday and Friday, even in that tropical range as we approach this weekend from the Charlotte area all the way down into the coast, with those dew points basically Thursday into Monday in the lower 70s. That is muggy air, the air that you can wear. But you can see today, dew point of 64. We're going to take advantage of this nice weather for sure. Today's high is 88, but it's going to feel more like 90. But by the time we get into tomorrow through the weekend, that's when those peak heat index values start to creep up into the middle 90s, definitely more in that uncomfortable range. For today, mix of sunshine and clouds across the metro. Any evening plans around 9 o'clock will be dropping into the lower 80s. UV index, no shocker, it's a 9, very high. That has burn time about 20 minutes, so don't skip out on that sunscreen hat and definitely find some shady spots if you're out and about today. The last 5 days have featured nothing but high temperatures in the middle to upper 80s, but peaking this past Saturday, 91. And while the next 5 days, you'll notice the actual temperatures are in the middle to upper 80s, it's going to be feeling more like the middle 90s out there, with daily storm chances in the forecast, scattered hit or miss activity Thursday all the way through early next week. This is not going to be a washout by any means, but any pop-up thunderstorm that develop could pack a punch in terms of heavy rainfall, lightning, and some gusty winds. So if you do have any weekend plans or even outdoor plans, it is Father's Day weekend, of course, happening on Sunday. Know that there is going to be a storm risk, so just keep an eye on the radar. High temperatures will be in the upper 80s for the weekend. Should be a warm one in this 7-day forecast. What we're going to be dealing with other than today is the heat, humidity, and daily storm chances in the forecast. That's why we're going to take advantage of today's nice weather. Still on the hotter side, but not as hot as it's going to feel like in the next coming days. Tropical humidity is what we're going to be looking at.
I got a name. Nick's Pick.
Nick's Pick.
There you go. It's
That's
short
really
and simple.
good.
Nick's Pick.
I like that.
Today is
really
Nick's
good.
Pick. Now this week, simple,
sweet, to the point.
Now the next 6 days, not my picks. But
Nick's Ick.
Nick's Ick. Nick's.
job,
Okay, there we go.
Becca.
We have a new segment.
Trademark it. Yes.
Nick's Pick and Nick's Ick. Man, so we have to come up with two different sort of
I like
graphics.
that. Okay.
Okay. Like you have to do a big thumbs up with a smile and then two
a
thumbs down.
Yeah. I like that.
Hold on, let me.
Yep. That's it.
There you go. Becca will be back in the next hour. Thank you, Becca, for your time.
Of course.
Nick's Pick. It has a ring to it.
It does have a
Carmen.
ring. It has a good
Nick's
ring
Ick.
to it.
Oh man, we're so creative here.
This is what we do.
This is what
why
we do.
we created the show.
Oh man. Okay. All right. So let's change gears. Let's go back to DC. So we showed you this earlier. So this is not Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, but he is testifying today. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is testifying on the fiscal year 2026 budget before the House Ways and Means Committee there in DC. Let's take a listen into what's happening right now.
He sent a collective message. And I hope, Mr. Secretary, that we will take advantage of that. I yield back the balance of my time.
Ms. Tenney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to say thank you to the Secretary for your remarkable testimony. I don't know if I've seen better testimony in my short number of years in Congress, but I will say I've continued to be impressed. And in honor of today's baseball game, President Trump's appointment with you, he definitely hit this one out of the park. So congratulations on your great work.
I would just say it's on 3 hours sleep. So.
That's even more incredible. I know the feeling of jet lag for sure. And just wanted to talk to you about a couple things. And I'm a small business owner. I have a district that my entire northern border is Canada, and they're a very important trading partner on so many levels. And we are, we really, I was one of the people that was here in President Trump's first term and voted for the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And unlike the Democrats who are here, I come from rural upstate New York, and I will tell you as a small business owner, and our business is in its 79th year, we're still in business. And the one thing that saved us was the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. It was incredible to give us the small business benefits that we received, that some of them you referred to today. And I just wanted to highlight just a couple things just to touch on this issue, and I really thank Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick for meeting with us and talking about this issue with us. But we do have a number of legacy businesses in my community. They're copper fabricators, aluminum fabricators, all dependent on smelting operations coming from Canada. And some of these companies are 100 years old, 200 years old. Paul Revere built his copper business in my region, Revere Copper. It's been there for over 200 years. And they're a little concerned about the tariffs, although they wholeheartedly agree we need to bring our supply chains back. They wholeheartedly agree that our area and our Erie Canal District, which I represent most of the Erie Canal, we were hollowed out by China and unfair trade, and we want to continue to do business. And they all agree that we need to deal with reshoring and bringing our supply chains back with President Trump. And these are wonderful, patriotic, legacy businesses. We want to make sure that they can be in business. Now, again, let me add one more factor. They're surviving in upstate New York. So we have some of the highest taxes, highest regulatory burden, highest minimum wage.
Most expensive energy.
Worst energy state, extremely, by the way, a catastrophic energy grid that we face. If it weren't for the nuclear power, all of which the nuclear reactors are in my district, and hydropower coming from Niagara Falls, another gift. We can't touch our wonderful natural gas reserves that we have in the Marcellus and Utica Shale because of New York's far left Democratic one-party rule, ridiculous unscientific policy. But we also have, is there a way that we can find some relief for some of these businesses on the tariff side and make sure that we can bring Canada back in the mix? And is there work being done not just on the fabrication side with copper, aluminum?
All right, so we want to shift away from this. Again, this is Secretary Bessent testifying in front of a House committee to the White House briefing that is underway. And this comes as President Donald Trump announced today that the United States will get magnets and rare earth minerals from China under a new trade deal, and that tariffs on Chinese goods will go to 55%. In return, Trump said the U.S. will provide China, quote, what was agreed to, including allowing Chinese students to attend American colleges and universities. Just one of the big stories coming out of the Trump administration today. So let's take a listen in on the White House briefing. It appears that she may be talking, now that's Caroline Leavitt, the White House secretary, about the unrest in Los Angeles right now. But let's take a listen into exactly what she's saying.
One of the most outrageous campaign of lies this country has ever seen from an elected official, blaming President Trump and brave law enforcement officers for the violence. She accused heroic American immigration and customs enforcement officers targeting illegal alien murderers, rapists, and pedophiles of, quote, sowing terror in communities and disrupting basic principles of safety in our city. Around the same time, Governor Newsom claimed that immigration enforcement actions were causing chaos. That's how radical Democrats have become. Their opposition to President Trump has forced them to side with illegal alien criminals in their communities and violent rioters and looters over law enforcement officers who are just doing their jobs. Mayor Bass and Governor Newsom fanned the flames and demonized our brave ICE officers. Instead of defending their city and their state, Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom claimed that in order for the riots and the violence to stop, ICE needed to leave and immigration raids must end. In other words, the position of the Democrat Party is that the federal government is not allowed to enforce our laws and to arrest and deport illegal alien criminals. They're attempting to use a violent mob as a weapon against their own constituents to prevent the enforcement of immigration law. This is deeply un-American and morally reprehensible. President Trump received a clear mandate from voters to reverse the illegal invasion ushered in by Joe Biden's open border and to end the lawlessness represented by Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom's California. President Trump promised to carry out the largest mass deportation campaign in American history, and left-wing riots will not deter him in that effort. Sanctuary cities and states will no longer be allowed to shield illegal criminals from deportation. Just take a look at some of the illegal monsters who were taken off the streets in Los Angeles in recent days. A Vietnamese national, a known gang member with a conviction for second-degree murder. A Mexican national with convictions for child molestation who was armed with a dangerous weapon and had previous arrests for robbery and domestic violence. A Filipino national with convictions of rape, assault, burglary, and theft. A Mexican national convicted of statutory rape, narcotics violations, and hit and run. A Nicaraguan national with convictions for domestic violence and hit and run and a previous arrest for willful cruelty to a child. And an illegal alien from Mexico who was arrested after allegedly throwing a Molotov cocktail at law enforcement officers during the Paramount riots on Saturday. He is now being charged with attempted murder. Law-abiding American citizens do not want these public safety threats living in their communities, no matter what Democrats like Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom may claim. And let this be an unequivocal message to left-wing radicals in other parts of the country who are thinking about copycatting the violence in an effort to stop this administration's mass deportation efforts. You will not succeed. Any lawlessness will only strengthen this president's resolve to defend the majority of Americans who want to live their lives peacefully, free from the fear of violent criminal illegal aliens. As President Trump said, order will be maintained and illegal aliens will be expelled from our country. In economic news, the latest Consumer Price Index inflation report came in today below expectations again. Since President Trump took office, inflation has come in below economics expectations every single month. Core inflation held steady and remains at the lowest level since March of 2021. Wage growth remains strong. The average private sector worker is on track to see their real earnings increase by around $1,200 adjusted for inflation. And prices continue to fall for everyday Americans. Energy prices fell from April to May. Gasoline has fallen each month since President Trump took office, down 12% over the past year. And prices for meat, poultry, eggs, and fish are all down from April to May as well. Under President Trump's strong leadership, America is beating Joe Biden's record-high inflation crisis. And once the One Big Beautiful Bill passes, our economy will boom like never before. This bill is the largest tax cut for middle-class Americans in history. The One Big Beautiful Bill gives a 15% tax cut to working Americans and families. We'll see increased take-home pay of $10,000 per year. The One Big Beautiful Bill expands the child tax credit to $2,500 for more than 40 million American families with children. And the One Big Beautiful Bill cuts taxes for overtime workers, saving them nearly $2,000 per year, and ends taxes on tips, saving tipped workers nearly $2,000 per year as well. All of these provisions are broadly popular with an overwhelming support from the American people. We need Republicans in Congress to finish the job and send the One Big Beautiful Bill back to President Trump's desk for his signature as soon as possible. With that, we'll get to questions. I'm sure you have many of them today. Here in our new media seat is Elizabeth Mitchell, the White House correspondent for the Daily Signal, who's not afforded a seat in this room, but today she is. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Caroline. I have two questions, if that's okay. First, a few Republicans on Capitol Hill are suggesting that President Trump scale back deportations, even as ICE is reportedly gearing up for raids in 5 more Democrat-led areas. Would anything dissuade President Trump, and would he consider sending in Marines if anti-ICE violence occurs in these cities?
Well, I think I may have just answered both of your questions with my opening monologue. The Trump administration is going to continue the mass deportation effort that the president promised the American public. Many of you were at those rallies in cities and communities across the country when the president spoke about his commitment to removing violent illegal criminals and anyone who has broken our nation's immigration laws from American communities. And God bless our ICE and Border Patrol who are working hard on that effort. This administration is going to continue that. And it's part of the reason we do need the One Big Beautiful Bill to pass as well, may I add, because the bill provides funding to hire more ICE agents and Border Patrol agents, more personnel on the ground to conduct this important public safety work.
Thank you. And on another topic, President Trump has indicated that aides to former President Biden who used the auto pen to sign major orders and pardons should be investigated for potential crimes. Does he think that Biden allowing or at least being negligently unaware of this activity was an impeachable offense?
I haven't heard the president address whether it's an impeachable offense, but it could perhaps be a criminal offense, especially on behalf of staffers who may have been utilizing the president's signature without his authority or consent. I understand that Republicans on the Hill are moving in the right direction to call attention to this and to bring in some former White House staffers who clearly knew more than they ever shared and never addressed with the American public. And so we look forward to seeing where this investigation continues, and I know the Department of Justice is also looking into the matter as well. Alex, good to see you today.
Good to see you, Caroline. Thank you. You mentioned foreign flags being blown during these protests. There are protest activities being organized for this weekend. Part of it are Democrats saying they want to reclaim the American flag. It's also being titled No King's Day. Does the president see himself as a king, and does the White House expect to see American flags being flown during these protests this weekend?
The president views himself as the president of the United States of America. This is a constitutional republic, and we want to see all of our citizens be proud of the country in which they are given the privilege and the blessing to live. And I think that those images of foreign flags being waved with, by illegal criminals and by violent rioters in the face of cars blowing up and of flames in the city. I have photos of that here to show you. With this violence and destruction that occurred is an image that Governor Gavin Newsom owns. This is his city, and President saw these images and he said that is not going to be accepted or tolerated, and hence why he deployed the National Guard and United States Marines who have helped to quell that violence.
If I can ask another. Sure. If the president does end up deploying any National Guard members, perhaps Marines, to blue states, would he be in contact with the governors prior to this? Would it be necessary?
Well, President Trump was in contact with Governor Gavin Newsom despite some of the claims he's made in the last couple of days. The president called the governor on Friday evening and told him to let law enforcement in California do their jobs. And the Los Angeles Police Department, by the way, are fantastic people. They are trying to do the work that they've so bravely signed up to do, to enforce the law, but they have been kneecapped by incompetent Democrat policies and Democrat politicians who do not allow their local law enforcement to correspond and coordinate with federal immigration authorities. And so the president gave Gavin Newsom a warning and said, get it together. 24 hours later, we saw more images like this. We heard about Border Patrol agents who were being the target of rocks. These illegal criminals were throwing rocks at our Border Patrol and ICE agents, and so the president made the decision to federalize California's National Guard. Stephanie.
Thank you. Two questions on the China trade deal, if I may. Sure. First, will the president formally sign the trade deal, and if so, when? Secretary Lutnick sort of alluded to the fact that it might be in a couple of days, but I'm curious if there's anything more specific to read out.
Sure. I do have more specifics for you. I spoke to the president about this. He spoke to his trade team, who did a fantastic job negotiating this on behalf of the United States and meeting with their Chinese counterparts. The president is talking to them about the details of it now, but what the president heard, he liked. China has agreed to open their markets to the United States separately of this deal, and when it comes to this deal, we're going back to the terms that were agreed upon in Geneva for the release of some of those critical minerals and the magnets from China to the United States, and we have agreed to fully comply with the Geneva Agreement as well. So the president is reviewing the details of that with his trade team now, and you'll hear more from him, I'm sure.
And then the second question, on tariffs, Secretary Lutnick suggested that the tariffs would remain unchanged with China. I'm wondering if there's any room for them to negotiate even lower, or if this is the floor.
I won't get ahead of any further negotiations. We're in a great place right now, and I would add that this is the result of a lot of hard work from the president and his team, and the president has a good and respectful relationship with President Xi, and as you know, they had a direct conversation which led to this success that the president announced on Truth Social this morning. JJ.
On North Korea, has the president tried to resume dialogue with Kim Jong-un? There's some reporting that the president sent a letter and tried to give it to Kim Jong-un through some North Korean diplomats through the UN, and they declined to take it and send it to Kim Jong-un?
The president remains receptive to correspondence with Kim Jong-un, and he'd like to see the progress that was made at that summit in Singapore, which I know you covered in 2018 during his first term. As for specific correspondence, I'll leave that to the president to answer. Sure.
Good afternoon. Yeah, thanks. Back to the trade deal negotiations with China.
Jimmy Lai, as you know, is a pro-democracy advocate, Catholic, sitting in solitary confinement in Hong Kong as we speak. His family believes he may be close to death. Did his name come up, Jimmy Lai's name come up in these negotiations with China?
Not to my knowledge. I understand the negotiations were very much focused on our trade and economic relationship with China.
Does the president believe he can free Jimmy Lai from prison?
I'll check with the president. It's certainly an important issue, and I'll get back to you.
Thanks, Caroline. The president said yesterday that paid insurrectionists were behind or involved in the protests in Los Angeles. Does the White House have any more details about who they believe is paying these protesters?
The president spoke about this last night when he returned from Fort Bragg, because frankly the president has a lot of common sense. And if you look at some of the imagery that we have received from the Department of Homeland Security and ICE and law enforcement who are on the ground, you will see boxes and boxes of very professionalized masks and rioting equipment being dropped off for these protesters. So it's a good question the president is raising, and one we are looking into, about who is funding these insurrectionists and these rioters and these protesters and these illegal criminals. And I have updates for you on the numbers, by the way. Since June 6th, there have been 330 illegal aliens that have been arrested as part of these riots in Los Angeles. 113 of those illegal aliens had prior criminal convictions. And overall, and this includes arrests of American citizens, there's been 157 people arrested for assault and obstruction-related charges, including the attempted murder of a police officer with a Molotov cocktail. So who is funding these illegal aliens who are coming in with this very professional riot gear? It's a question everyone in this room who cares about truth should be asking. And we encourage your help in trying to get to the bottom of that question. Indina.
Thank you, Caroline. About Elon Musk, he issued an apology this morning. Has the president accepted the apology, or does he think it's too little too late?
The president acknowledged the statement that Elon put out this morning, and he is appreciative of it, and we are continuing to focus on the business of the American people.
And has the administration started a review of Musk's government contracts, something that the president said he's considering?
What do you mean by that?
Has the administration started a review of the contracts that Musk and his companies currently have?
No efforts have been made on that front, as far as I'm aware.
Okay. And just one more, if I may, on just everything sort of we've seen so far with the president's response to the LA protests. There is criticism that seems to suggest that the president responded the way he did because it was a deliberate, calculated attempt to sort of shift focus away from his feud with Musk. How would you respond to that?
That the president responded to the LA riots, condemning the violence
from Musk.
That's an incredibly disingenuous attack. The president saw images of Border Patrol and ICE agents being hailed with rocks and Molotov cocktails. He saw vehicles being burned to the ground with illegal aliens flying foreign flags, and that's what prompted the president to have this response that has clearly worked, because last night in Los Angeles you didn't see many of those images. And I would add the governor and the mayor need to actually do more. I know Gavin Newsom had a big address to the nation last night. I guess he thought that's what it was for maybe his future political ambitions, but he spoke a lot of words. We haven't seen action. California has been a mess for years because of the incompetence of Gavin Newsom, so the president was responding to that only. Caitlin.
Caroline, two questions for you.
Sure.
Over the weekend, Secretary Noem sent a memo to the Pentagon asking Secretary Hegseth to have and direct the military that's on the ground in LA to arrest and detain what she said were lawbreakers. Is the president okay with that? And under what authority would the members of the military be able to arrest people inside the United States?
I can't speak for a letter that came from the Department of Homeland Security. I can't speak for the president and what's currently happening on the ground now. And as you know, the president federalized the National Guard under U.S. Code 10, which he has the authority to do. And our United States Marines and the National Guardsmen and women who are on the ground right now are helping to create a peaceful environment for ICE and Border Patrol, who were being, again, hailed with rocks, who were being violently and viciously attacked. They needed reinforcements, and so our United States Marines who are on the ground are providing those reinforcements to ensure the environment is peaceful so that these raids and deportations can continue.
But he realizes they can't actually arrest people unless he invokes the Insurrection Act, which, I mean, seemingly was not something that was in Secretary Noem's memo a clear distinction she did not make there.
Again, you're trying to conflate a letter that was sent to the Department of Homeland Security to the president's legal authority. The president understands the legal authority that he invoked, and that's the current situation right now.
When it comes to federalizing the National Guard, what is the specific criteria that the president is using for when he's deciding to do that, and in which states?
The president was asked and answered this yesterday. He wants to see an end to the chaos and the violence. He doesn't want to see law enforcement officers being attacked. He wants to see peace. He wants law-abiding Californians to be able to bring their kids to school, to be able to go to work without seeing this violence in the streets. That's what the president's hoping for, and that's why he's taken this action. John.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. Two questions on two separate topics. One has to do with the military parade taking place here in Washington this weekend. There's a lot of security around the White House complex, around the Capitol complex, even along the tidal basin. Is that just proactive? Are you expecting anything in particular in terms of unrest like we've seen in Los Angeles?
These are proactive security measures to protect those marching in the parade, many of whom will be veterans and our brave men and women in uniform and Gold Star families. There's going to be military families from around the country who are flying into this parade. And of course, it's to protect the spectators who will be enjoying this incredibly patriotic show on Saturday. And I hope you all join us there.
And then secondly, Secretary Pete Hegseth testified on the Senate side of the Capitol today.
Yes.
And he was asked about America's, the administration's view of Vladimir Putin's intentions. And specifically, it was asked whether or not his intentions go beyond, his territorial ambitions go beyond Ukraine. When that question was posed to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Kane replied that he does believe that his territorial ambitions go beyond Ukraine, but Secretary Hegseth says it's not clear at this point. How does the president view this issue?
The president has spoken on this. He said, as he calls it, he believes Ukraine was always the apple of Putin's eye. And he made it very clear to Putin in his first term not to invade Ukraine. Putin didn't invade Ukraine because of President Trump's peace through strength foreign policy agenda and the effective deterrence policies that he implemented in the first term. Unfortunately, because of the weakness and incompetence of the previous administration, Vladimir Putin made the decision to invade Ukraine. And now we have this brutal war, which the president is working very hard to end. Jasmine.
Thanks so much, Caroline. The president warned that any protests on Saturday would be met with force. Can you clarify what kind of protest President Trump does support or find acceptable?
The president absolutely supports peaceful protests. He supports the First Amendment. He supports the right of Americans to make their voices heard. He does not support violence of any kind. He does not support assaulting law enforcement officers who are simply trying to do their job. It's very clear for the president what he supports and what he does not. Unfortunately for Democrats, that line has not been made clear, and they've allowed this unrest and this violence to continue, and the president has had to step in.
What question? So if there were peaceful protests on Saturday for the military parade, President Trump would allow that?
Of course the president supports peaceful protests. What a stupid question. Raquel.
Thank you so much, Caroline.
Raquel, and then I can go to you, Francis. Go.
Thank you so much, Caroline. I have two questions. One about Israel. Yesterday, the U.S. ambassador to Israel said the U.S. no longer is pursuing the goal of an independent Palestinian state. Can you confirm that the president is no longer supporting a two-state solution? And is President Trump considering diplomatic action against countries who takes action against Israel during next week UN conference?
Right now, the president views the situation in Israel and Gaza as deeply unfortunate and needing to end. And the president is realistic about the current state of affairs in this region of the world. And that's why the president has said the #1 focus and priority of the administration is to release all of the hostages from Gaza and to end this conflict as soon as possible. The administration is still pushing very hard for the release of all the hostages. And as for what happens next, clearly Gaza is an uninhabitable place. It needs to be rebuilt with the help of our Arab partners, and the president wants to see that happen as well. Take a couple more.
One on the G7 engagement. Then Trump is traveling there on Sunday. Other presidents beyond the G7 leaders are also going. President Lula from Brazil, President Sheinbaum from Mexico, and President Zelensky from Ukraine are also going. Do you have confirmation if President Trump is meeting any other leaders on the sideline of the G7?
Yes.
updates, about the Lula engagement in Lula?
I can confirm there will be quite a few bilateral meetings between the president and other foreign leaders. The White House is still working very hard to finalize that schedule, and we will provide that for you as soon as we have it.
Great.
Thanks, Kathleen. Just back to the China trade deal, can you talk about the status of the export controls that the U.S. imposed? Are those no longer being imposed?
We are fully complying with the Geneva Agreement. Go ahead. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. One foreign question for you and one domestic. The foreign, the president, of course, has said he would lift sanctions on Syria. Is there an executive order coming along soon to go do that? And is the president planning to try to get involved in any kind of a peace agreement between Israel and Syria that would disengage those two?
To the best of my knowledge, the Treasury Department took action after the president made that announcement in Saudi Arabia.
Okay. And then on the domestic side, you were just asked about the First Amendment rights issues. In the president's comments yesterday, though, he just said protesters would be strongly dealt with. In your list before, you referred to insurrectionists, rioters, and protesters together. Obviously, they're quite different from your earlier answer. I'm struck by the fact that the president has not at any point said the most important thing here is to protect the First Amendment rights of peaceful protesters. So I'm wondering, where in his hierarchy of interests does he place that? Is the First Amendment protection the most important? Is stopping violence most important? Why is he not out saying all peaceful protesters will be protected?
I think two things can be important at the same time. And the president, as I just answered, supports the right of Americans to peacefully protest. He supports the First Amendment. But that is not the majority of the behavior that we have seen taking place in Los Angeles. We have seen mobs of violent rioters and agitators assaulting law enforcement officers, assaulting our federal immigration authorities. And we have seen, as I said, this goes back to what this administration is trying to do and accomplish, and that's enforcing law and order in our nation's communities, and it's removing public safety threats from communities in Los Angeles.
You're saying the majority have not been peaceful, the majority have been violent.
I just read for you the arrest numbers. We've arrested nearly 400 illegal aliens alone, just illegal aliens who have been arrested in these riots since June 6th, since they began.
Thousands of people on the streets.
Yeah, and we've had hundreds of people who have assaulted law enforcement officers. Are you saying that that's that's appropriate behavior?
No,
Are you
no,
saying
I'm not
that
saying
the
that at all.
president
I'm
shouldn't
just
take
trying
action?
to figure out.
The Democrat governor and the Democrat mayor of Los Angeles have failed their citizens. And the majority of Americans, the majority of Californians, do not want to see law enforcement officers being assaulted in the streets. And thankfully, the president took action and stepped in to protect our federal law enforcement agents, to protect federal buildings, to protect the federal mission of deporting illegal criminals off of our streets. And that mission will continue every day as far as we're concerned. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Caroline.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Right there was a White House briefing that just wrapped up there. You see it from both angles, from the podium and those reporters there asking questions. So again, that just wrapped up. All right, we want to come back here and come in with some breaking news. We just learned this as we were in the White House briefing. But Brian Wilson, and I'm reading this article from AP News, so bear with me. Brian Wilson, the Beach Boys visionary and fragile leader whose genius for melody, arrangements, and wide-eyed self-expression inspired Good Vibrations, California Girls, and other summertime anthems, and made him into one of the world's most influential recording artists, has died at 82. Again, we got this news as we were in the middle of the White House briefing, so we wanted that to wrap up before we came here with this breaking news. Again, Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys has died at 82. Now, Wilson's family posted the news of his death to their website, or to his website rather, and social media accounts on this afternoon. Now, further details were not immediately available. Now, since May 2024, Wilson had been under a court conservatorship to oversee his personal and medical affairs with Wilson's longtime representatives, publicists, and manager in charge. The eldest and last surviving of the three musical brothers, Brian played bass, Carl led guitar, and Dennis on the drums. And he and his fellow Beach Boys rose to fame in the 1960s. And look, iconic group. Again, bear with me. I'm reading the article in real time from the AP News. But again, Beach Boys founder Brian Williams has died at the age of 82. All right, so let's shift away from that. Again, we will have, as soon as more information comes about regarding Brian Wilson, we will make sure to pass that along. Let's go now. Is this DC, Carlene? Is this percent? Okay. All right, so we showed you this earlier before we got to the White House briefing, but we want to go back now to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent testifying. Here he is right there on your screen. He is testifying on the fiscal year 26 budget before the House Ways and Means Committee there in Washington, D.C. Let's take a listen in.
Fiscal year. But this reconciliation bill is set to increase that to over $4 trillion by the end of the decade, and it could send interest costs higher than $2 trillion by 2034. This would consume nearly 1/3 of all government revenue. The CBO said the reconciliation bill would increase the deficit by $3 trillion. A reasonable federal budget committee estimates $5 trillion. Penn Wharton estimates $5.8 trillion. I get the warnings of rising debt and rising debt eventually causing an economic calamity, but it's already hurting the economy now, as we're seeing higher interest rates, higher mortgage rates, and we very well may see elevated inflation and a drag on economic growth. Now, under the current debt trends, real income growth is projected to slow by 10% in the next 30 years. But if the debt rapidly rises, income growth could decline by 30%. Secretary, in your confirmation testimony, you stated that we must get our fiscal house in order. And you've talked about the national debt as a security problem in the past. Is this still your view?
Congressman, could I ask where those numbers came from?
I will get that to you, but I have those in my preparation.
Okay,
happy to get those to you. Once again, I hope it is still your view. I'm out of time, but I really hope it is still your view. And I hope that you not only support trade deals that deal with Congress, I hope that you support a bipartisan fiscal commission where Democrats and Republicans can actually come together, sit at the table, and actually work together on reducing our debt and deficit. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I yield back.
You know what, Mr. Secretary, I'm going to give you some opportunity to answer a question.
Which question?
Well, I know you're wondering where the figures came from. You need to know where the figures came from.
As I've said before, when I look in the mirror in the morning, I see a deficit hawk, and they support everything to consolidate this debt, stabilize the debt to GDP, and bring down that ratio in a controlled manner. We didn't get here overnight. We're not going to fix it overnight. I would like to fix it by the end of President Trump's term.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Peenstreet, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Secretary Bessent, thank you for being in front of us today at Ways and Means. I consider myself a novice in economics. I love to read it and work through it, even teach it once in a while. And I appreciate all that you've done under this administration. I live in rural Iowa. You live, I think, in rural South Carolina, and we love our areas that we live in. And for me, President Trump won rural America by about 90%. There's an ultimatum, the way I see it, an ultimatum on what we need to change in government to make America great again. And I'd like to talk about that as we look forward and as you're in your role, and we have this big, beautiful bill that's coming out. Can you talk a little bit about, for Iowa or South Carolina, how this bill will grow our states economically? And I think about, immediate expensing, things like this. Can you just tell the public saying, all right, this is how this is going to be economics on steroids?
With pleasure. So, and I think it's a multi-pronged approach. I would go back to the small and community banks, because as I said, small and community banks finance 70% of ag loans, so we are working to stabilize and unshackle them. The tax bill, farm structures would count for immediate expensing in the tax bill, as would any farm equipment that would increase the efficiencies.
179 depreciation, you name it.
And as you know, most farms are set up as pass-through corporations. Right. And again, these people, I think, do not consider themselves, they're not the ones being stereotyped and lampooned by the other side of the aisle here. These are hardworking people who, they do manual labor, they keep their books, they buy equipment, they make business decisions, and I think that the certainty and the permanence here is going to be very, very important.
It's invaluable.
To know that it is going to be there. And as I said, many business owners with whom I've spoken are holding back on the expenditures. Right. And I'm glad you mentioned 90% of the farmers who supported President Trump. I actually, within the past 48 hours, with my Chinese counterpart, I told the Vice Premier that you did not make good on your ag purchases, and President Trump's #1 constituency, they are our farmers, and we expect that that will be made good.
Thank you, Secretary Bessent. Thank you. I mean that. I mean, our commodity prices, soybeans and corn, we rely on these export markets. And if Brazil and Argentina takes over these markets, we're in deep trouble. So I'm very grateful for that. And just talking about tariffs a little bit, we've been taken advantage of for decades. So now as we move forward, we're trying to create a level playing field. And you talked about certainty. Can you just extrapolate on that just a little bit so for small business or large manufacturers or whatever, they just want certainty. How does this project out over the next 6 to 12 months?
So I think, as I've said many times, this administration's economic program is a three-legged stool: trade, tax, and deregulation. The trade has moved faster because the president has used IEPA, an emergency power. Tax, I congratulate everyone in the Republican side of moving the One Big Beautiful Bill through the House with Speaker Johnson's leadership. And we are working with your Senate colleagues. Senator Thune has given the date of July 4th. We'll see. And then deregulation, I think, is both the regulation of the Biden administration acted as a tax, and it acted as an expense on the American people per household, and it slowed economic growth. Yes. And I believe that as these regulations come off, whether it is permitting, whether it for ag, whether it is water usage, whether it is the environmental, that those will kick in the third, fourth quarter, and by 2026 will really take off. So, I think on trade we want to move quickly, but these are big issues, and we want to do it right. And as I said, there are 18 important trading partners. We will get those, and I think we can have certainty there, but the real certainty we need is this tax bill.
Thank you, Secretary Bessent, and thank you and Trump for all you do. This is incredible, and we're going to have a great economic future as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Malliotakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here. Under the previous Biden administration, we had 0 trade deals. And in just 5 months, we're seeing more cooperation from Mexico and Canada as it relates to the border and fentanyl. UK, you have a trade deal there. China, we have a framework. Congratulations on the success in last night's meeting. India, Japan, they are now at the table, as are dozens of other countries. And I think it's really important as we approach that July 9th date there for lifting the hold or the pause on the tariffs, that we take into account that we do have these partners who are working with us in good faith, And I hope and I urge the administration to not reinstate the tariffs for the nations that are at the table, that are working with us to reduce the tariffs, the trade deficits, and increase our market access for our products. And I would just like to get your opinion on that, if you agree that we should have a more targeted approach. Let's focus on the most egregious offenders who are not as willing to work with us to rectify that.
Well, we are focusing on the most egregious, and there, as I've said, there are 18 important trading partners. Most of them account for approximately north of 90% of the trade deficit. So our largest trading partners are, many of them, the biggest problem. Many of them have, as I've said, have come with good offers and are working in good faith. It will be up to President Trump, but it is my belief that if someone is negotiating in good faith, that an extension will be possible.
That's great news.
And in conversations with USTR Ambassador Greer, it's my belief that with smaller countries where we have lower levels of trade, we may be able to do a one-size-fits-all regional deal. So that would cover a great deal of ground on
great, and
I
wish you a lot of success there, and I appreciate that. And if I also want to keep in mind that if we want to build in America, as the President, as you, as I, and this committee wants to do, we need to make sure that we have access to parts and supplies from abroad. So let's keep that in mind as well as we're moving forward with the tariff discussions. I'm concerned about tariffs on pharmaceuticals. In particular, it's an access issue, it's an affordability issue, it's a national security issue. As you know, right now we're relying heavily on foreign countries, particularly communist China. But domestic pharmaceutical production requires long-term investment, and to establish a secure and self-reliant supply chain here at home, it's something that you can't just flip the switch on. It does take time. And certainly the provisions you mentioned earlier that we put in our one big beautiful bill will help us get there, incentivize, expand facilities, build new facilities. But until we reach that full domestic production capability, the U.S. remains dangerously dependent on foreign sources for life-saving medicines and medical inputs. And so I hope that we'll take that into account when we look at tariffs and not place tariffs on pharmaceuticals that we desperately need here in the United States. I, alongside with my colleague, Congressman Schneider, we introduced bipartisan legislation, H.R. 2213, the Medical Supply Chain Resiliency Act. And we learned from COVID that we must, obviously, that our supply chain is too fragile, and we need to do what we can to make it more accessible, these pharmaceuticals. My legislation would address this by enhancing the President's ability to negotiate trade agreements with trusted trade partners to reduce or eliminate tariffs, quotas, and other barriers that create a disincentive to manufacturing here in the United States. It would ensure that critical medical goods and supplies and services are delivered safely, quickly, efficiently to patients here at home. And I hope that you will take a look at this bill. It has some good bipartisan support, good industry support, and it really does complement what we did in the one big beautiful bill to incentivize and give the President that flexibility to negotiate with those trading partners.
Congresswoman, I could not agree with you more. The only good outcome from COVID was it showed us our strategic deficiencies in areas like semiconductors and especially pharma. As you mentioned, a large part of our pharma does come from the PRC. That actually gives them negotiating leverage. I think it would be a tragic mistake if they were ever to flip off that switch, but it's always there. They could. They flipped off other switches. India, who is a more reliable, durable partner, is also a large supplier, but we do need to bring that home.
Well, great. I look forward to working with you on that, and an endorsement from you of my legislation would be very welcome.
Good. Thank you for your leadership on that.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Horsford.
Thank you, Chairman Smith, and to the ranking member. Mr. Secretary, good afternoon. Does taking health care away from 16 million Americans lower prices for working families, yes or no?
I'm not sure what that question means.
The bill, the big, beautiful bill that was passed by this committee and the majority of the Republicans in the House would eliminate health care for 16 million Americans. I'm asking, does that lower the cost for working families? Yes or no?
Again, which cost? Oil, fuel cost, food cost?
Household cost.
Sorry?
The cost that households have to cover every month. Middle class working people.
Again, I disagree with the characterization.
So the answer is no. The bill doesn't deal with that.
Well,
can you
that's your
name
answer.
one rural community whose hospital will be strengthened by this one big, beautiful bill? Just one. Yes or no?
Again, I'm not HHS, but I will be happy to get to you on that.
I would appreciate that answer. 16 million people stand to lose health care. That's thousands of hospitals that will be affected. We're talking about jobs and families that will be impacted. Worse, we're dealing with these tariffs, which are taxes that Americans pay, which are raising the cost on medical equipment, putting further strain on rural hospitals in my district, but yet the billionaires under this plan will still get their tax break. Mr. Secretary, under the bill, who gets the most benefits? A billionaire with a complex tax return or a working parent with one W-2?
Under President Trump's first term, a greater...
Not the first term.
Well,
I'm asking under this bill.
Including this bill, in terms of percent, as opposed to absolute numbers, in terms of percent, working families will have a greater...
Well, in fact, Mr. Secretary, every credible outside estimator says that the wealthiest win under this proposal and working people and the poor lose. They pay more. Working people pay more. That's the story of this big, beautiful bill. Help the ultra-rich and leave everyone else paying the price. Are you yourself a beneficiary of any provision in this bill? Will you personally receive a tax cut under the provisions of under this bill?
Two things, Congressman.
Yes or no? It's
we had a referendum on November 5th, and
Mr.
working
Secretary,
Americans
yes or
voted
no?
for President
Reclaiming
Trump.
my time.
And
Reclaiming my time, Mr. Chairman.
Two,
Mr. Chairman, I'm reclaiming my time.
And two...
So, Mr. Secretary, it's my time, Mr. Secretary. I'm asking you a yes or no question.
I'm trying to answer you, and...
It's a yes or no question.
Saying it louder does not elicit an answer.
Well, not answering the question at all proves that you're evasive. Are you the head, the person that's the head of overseeing the implementation of our tax code, a beneficiary under the provisions of, any provisions of this bill?
Again, this is an extension of an existing bill.
So are you a beneficiary?
This is an extension.
Okay, I will take that as a no. Mr. Secretary, did the TCJA help increase the supply of housing? Yes or no?
Sorry?
Did the TCJA help increase the supply of housing? Yes or no?
I don't know. And
according to the Federal Reserve of Philadelphia, comparing the pre- and post-TCJA housing market, they found that between January of 2015 to October of 2019, housing construction, in fact, slowed under TCJA. So, Mr. Secretary, do tariffs on steel, aluminum, and lumber raise the cost of construction? Yes or no?
Again, on the housing point, the interest rates went up because the economy was stronger.
And under this proposal...
Inflation was nascent.
And under a budget report that just came out from the Yale Budget Lab, they just released data showing that because of the debt that is going to be added by this big, ugly bill, mortgage rates will increase. Are you aware of that?
I'm aware that
this bill is a disaster for the people of Nevada who are struggling with the cost of rent and the ability to afford housing. These are the pressing issues that my constituents are concerned about, and I hope that this administration understands the impact of the negative consequences of their proposal.
This administration very much understands
the
impacts on working Americans, and that's why working Americans voted for President Trump.
Mr. Kerry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the Secretary. Number one, I just want to be clear, and I already know the answer to this, but it's a yes or no. Are you making more money today than you were when you were in the private sector?
Less.
No, I know that.
And just to be clear, too,
yeah.
in 2017, when TCJA was enacted.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Serderant. Right there on your screen live is Secretary Scott Bessent, testifying in front of a House committee on the fiscal year 2026 budget that's happening there in Washington, D.C. We'll get back to that in just a moment, but we want to come back home because we finally got a name. We just need a little bit of branding, but we landed on it. Nick's Picks or Nick's Icks. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm cool.
Nick's Picks and Icks.
Okay. I'm with it. All right. So
We're workshopping it.
Well, we do know today is
a pick.
A pick. It's
Yes.
Nick's Pick.
It's a pick.
It's exciting. It's exciting.
It's great news. It's great news. Best news I've heard all day
And
from
Icks
myself.
starting tomorrow through the weekend.
Yeah.
But we'll focus on the pick.
Yeah.
Today is Nick's Pick. Yes. It is a good day.
This is positively.
In case you don't know who this is meteorologist Becca Burr. So thank you for joining us again, Becca.
Of course, people should be familiar with
Okay.
me by now.
I feel like I tried.
She's a regular.
I kind of stole the thunder a little bit with my Nick's Pick and Ick. So I just wanted to make sure. So there you go. I'm gonna shut up.
All right. Well, you know what? Beautiful weather outdoors. Carlene, did you do your?
I did.
walk?
I did. Went outside. I went to the Jersey Michaels and picked up some lunch, and it was nice. It wasn't too bad. It was warm in my car, of course, but it's nice.
It was a.
It was a pick. It was a pick for me. It was an A minus.
Yeah.
I'll say it's an A minus.
A minus. Okay.
Yeah, today's really setting up to be a beautiful afternoon. We've got some slightly drier air in place, which is allowing for a nicer afternoon to set up. So right now, mix of sunshine and clouds from our Lylesville Anson camera, courtesy of Mr. Sparky. Got some puffy cumulus clouds out there over towards Anson County. Nothing but clear skies here in the metro, and a little bit of haze actually from that Canadian wildfire smoke, just not nearly as much as what we saw last week. Outside now, it's up to 86 in the metro, 84 in Statesville, 83 in Shelby, 74 in Boone, and 72 over in Jefferson. But of course, we also do have to factor in the heat index. So Chirac, it is feeling like 93. It's feeling like 90 in Rockingham, 87 only in Charlotte, 84 in Lincolnton, and feeling like the lower to middle 70s in the mountains. So satellite and radar showing dry conditions across our region, getting a little bit clipped with some of those downpours for our most southern counties. That is over towards Chesterfield. Really not something that we'll worry about too much, as the bigger impacts today for the showers and storms are going to be alongside this stalled front. Right now you can see those downpours have really set up towards Columbia, all the way over towards Florence, South Carolina. Here's where that stalled front is. It's really alongside this front that's going to have a chance to see a pop-up shower or thunderstorm today, but most locations will stay dry. Coverage is not impressive. In fact, if you're listening over towards Chesterfield and Rockingham, you have the best chance to see a downpour later on. Just most locations will stay dry. By the time we get to Thursday, it's going to be a different setup. It's going to be scattered showers, hit or miss thunderstorms during the afternoon hours as the system taps in to that daytime heating, even lingering into early Friday morning. And this is going to be a typical setup that we see for this time of year, something called the Bermuda High. So right now we've got this high pressure system sitting over the Charlotte metro area now, and that's what's bringing in the slightly drier air. But as we look ahead to Thursday and Friday, our weather is going to be controlled by this Bermuda high pressure system, which is going to be advecting warm and tropical air all across the southeast and into the Carolinas, and is going to be responsible for bringing us daily storm chances from Thursday all the way through early next week. Best way to show this is atmospheric moisture, especially up towards the mountains today. It's going to be a dry, beautiful afternoon with those actual temperatures feeling like the actual temperatures. Just a little bit muggy around the Charlotte area, but you'll notice tropical air quickly replaces this by the time we get tomorrow, and is something that is going to be a trend that we will carry through the weekend with those dew points well into the upper 60s, lower 70s, meaning it's going to be sticky and it's going to feel hotter than the actual temperature. Today, going to be feeling more like 90 across many locations in the metro, but it's going to be feeling more like the middle 90s all the way through the end of the work week. So for today, should be a nice one. Mostly sunny skies, high temperatures making it to the upper 80s, falling down close to 80 degrees by around 9 p.m. Definitely don't skip out on that SPF with that UV index level still at a 9, very high burn time of about 20 minutes. This is the time of the year where that sun angle is the most powerful. So definitely don't skip out on the SPF basically for the entire month. The last 5 days have featured mostly temperatures in the 80s, peaking at 91 this past Saturday. That was our first 90-degree day we've had so far this year. And looking ahead towards the next 5 days, you'll notice temps hanging on into the middle to upper 80s. No 90-degree days necessarily in sight, but with that tropical air, it is going to feel like the middle 90s. With daily storm chances in the forecast, it's not going to be a washout every single day, so definitely do not cancel any plans if you have any outdoor activities, but just know that you'll want to keep an eye on the radar, want to keep an eye on the skies. There will be a chance for hit or miss thunderstorms every afternoon and evening. Of course, if you're planning out your Father's Day weekend, know that we'll also carry that storm risk through the weekend, but it's also going to be hot, middle to upper 80s across that area, but feeling more, of course, like 95 and 96. So 7-day forecast you can see today. It's going to be nice. It's going to be comfortable. Uncomfortable starting tomorrow through the weekend. Father's Day does not look bad if you're, maybe gonna go head out to golf. That is what meteorologist Chris Mulcahy is doing on Saturday, and he's gonna be dodging a couple of showers and thunderstorms. We'll continue this pattern all the way through about Tuesday.
Is that his Father's Day gift?
That is his Father's Day gift because I asked him specifically, and it was tea time.
Okay.
Yeah. Tea time on Saturday is his gift. Okay. Uninterrupted golf time.
He told us he was going out at Huntersville. It was out I can't remember the name of the course, but he's going out there.
I can't see Chris as a golf guy.
He told us he's not very good.
Okay.
So maybe there's a reason.
Okay, I'm not, okay.
We're not gonna dog Chris.
All right, I love Chris.
We love Chris.
We love Chris.
His skills may not be there. Mine aren't either, but okay.
When's the last time you golfed?
Never. I've never golfed.
Never?
No, I was about to count putt-putt.
Becca?
I golfed a couple months ago, actually.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know what? I wasn't bad because I've watched enough golf that I know how to do it. I know how to swing. So actually, I was doing good.
Good for you.
I want to learn. Golf is intimidating for me.
Yeah, it is intimidating. Yeah. It's also very mental too.
It is.
I mean, it's all you're on your own. I mean, if you have a caddy, great, but like most of the time, it's a mental thing and it's all on you.
It's a long day. Doing 18 holes is a lot. I did 9 holes and I wanted to quit by the third. And especially when it's hot, it makes you more angry.
Yeah. And especially if you're not swinging the club good or great as well, because it's like, man, it's a lot of factors. If you're not playing well, you're like, all right.
You're spending your day looking for the ball, and then this, and you're sweating, and then you're,
Yeah, I need some basic golf lessons, and then I'll feel more comfortable going out there.
We should go Jane. Jane, she's a golfer.
She's a golfer?
Yeah.
She is?
Yes.
I feel like the club is taller than her. Okay.
We don't dog Miss Jane on y'all on this.
I'm sorry, Jane. It was a layup. It was right there. I'm like, I had to get that joke.
You're gonna have to answer her.
Maybe Chris will teach us a few things after this weekend.
Will he teach us though?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Chris will teach you anything you ask him to.
That's right.
Teach us not what not to do.
Not to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there you go. There you go. Becca Bursell, thank you for your time.
Of course.
Oh man, learning how to golf. Okay, I never thought about. I have thought about it, but I haven't really thought too deep about it. So
I'd like to learn. I mean, I'd like to learn the basics. I've been around it for so long. From Charleston, there's golf courses everywhere.
Putt doesn't count though, right?
I mean, I don't. Short game counts.
It counts, but it doesn't, right?
No. Probably
Okay.
No.
We'll work on it.
We'll work on it.
Where we want to get to next, Carly?
Oh, you know what we should mention?
Okay.
We should mention.
Yes. Thank you. So, look, you want to keep your TV on on WCNC Plus.
All the time.
All the time. And one great reason, well, because of the stream.
Because of us.
Because of us, of course. But also, we just launched live Weather Impact on WCNC Plus. Woo! Starting at 6:30. So Brad is going to run from the studio to this studio to do this show.
He's a man that never quits.
Man, Brad is awesome.
He's 24/7.
He is 24/7. We have more Brad at 6:30, from 6:30 to 7 here on the stream on WCNC Plus. Live Weather Impact on WCNC Plus starting at 6:30. Launched on Monday. It's been a great thing so far. I can't wait. I got a chance to talk to Brad about the show yesterday before the 4 o'clock show. He said it went by fast.
Yeah.
He said it goes by fast. He enjoys it. And so, yeah. I'm looking forward to see the show evolve and grow, and Brad get into the weeds of a lot of the weather stuff.
Brad knows a little about absolutely everything. He's one of the most fascinating people I've ever met.
Mm-hmm.
I loved when I used to produce the 6 o'clock show, pulling back the curtain here on Live Impact News. I could throw a story in ahead of him, any animal story, any sort of climate story, space story. He knows it. He knows a little about absolutely everything. So he's very fascinating.
He just, I don't know, he goes into his brain and
stays there.
And pulls that. I don't know how he does it. Because for me, if you ask me, I got to research it.
He's got a Library of Congress in his head.
Yeah, he does. He really does. He is amazing. And this show is amazing.
Yes.
Shout out to Jeb Goldman. He's a producer on the show. You've heard this name. You've seen his face.
You've seen his face. You've heard Jeb.
Another hard worker. He's here all the time. So those two are putting on some good product here on WCNC Plus. Again, live Weather Impact on WCNC Plus at 6:30. Just making sure. I wanted to hit the refresh page really quick, Carlene.
Okay.
On the story that we've been following.
Sure.
Bear with me for a second. All right. Just make sure. Because this is a very, very big case, but we haven't. Okay. We got confirmation. Carlene.
Okay.
All right. I can put this down. All right.
Okay.
So. You can bring up the shot of the courthouse.
Sure.
So this is coming from AP News. And again, we've been tracking this. We just want to make sure we had the right outlet to report this news. So we just got in. Jury convicts Harvey Weinstein of top charge in the retrial of his landmark #MeToo sex crimes case. Again, that is coming from AP News. Former movie mogul Harvey Weinstein was convicted today of one of the top charges in his sex crimes retrial, but acquitted of another, and jurors were as yet unable to reach a verdict on a third charge. So split verdict meted out a measure of vindication to his accusers and prosecutors, but also to Weinstein after this landmark case was thrown into limbo. If you've been following this case, I mean, Weinstein's initial conviction was 5 years ago, and it seemed to cement the downfall of one of Hollywood's most powerful men in a pivotal moment for the Me Too movement. But again, I just want to reiterate the story right now. Former movie mogul Harvey Weinstein convicted today of the top charge in his sex crimes retrial, but acquitted of another, and jurors unable to reach a verdict on a third charge. So this is a live look outside of Manhattan Courthouse there in New York. You see the microphone set up by...
We're unclear if anybody's going to come out and talk about it.
Yeah.
If they do, we will bring it to you. They've kind of had these microphones and set up for the last couple of days, and we'll bring it to you if someone steps up.
So it looks like it's sort of the end of this saga involving Harvey Weinstein that's been playing out for years at this point. So as soon as they come out, if they come out, we'll bring it to you here live on Live Impact News. All right, we'll shift over now to Washington, D.C., where a House committee is hearing some testimony from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. He is speaking on the fiscal year budget, 2026 budget, and taking some tough questions from lawmakers there in Washington, D.C. Let's take a listen in.
Will you resign if the targets aren't reached?
Those were all for the end of President Trump's administration.
Well, you
so
said...
I plan on leaving then.
Okay, well, How about we make a little wager, 50 bucks? You know, I'll be around. Would you make a wager? Come on.
If it can go to charity,
Okay,
with pleasure.
Let's make a wager, 50 bucks.
To charity.
To charity.
Okay.
And here's the why, because most economists don't think that you're going to hit those targets. CBO actually thinks this budget bill is going to grow the deficit to 7% of GDP. If you might not be willing to put your job on the line because you'll be gone by the time that the mess actually explodes. I get it. I mean, Schweikert on this committee didn't even want to vote on this damn bill because he's a deficit hawk. So the American people need a little bit clearer answers. They are struggling. They're trying to make ends meet. Rent is going up, food costs are going up, everything's going up, and the bill, the big billionaire bill, because it benefits mainly billionaires at the expense of working people. You're cutting their health care. You're making sure that they're going to be paying more than $20 billion over the next 10 years if you're making $30,000 or less. And you guys don't care. And I think you don't care because your net worth is $521 million.
Okay, your time has expired.
That would be a false assumption.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
That would be a false assumption. I think the people who didn't care were the Biden administration, who wiped out working families and lost in a massive referendum on November 5th.
I would like to remind the committee that this is the Ways and Means Committee, and have discussions on policies, not personalities. And don't call another member out by their name. If you're referring to another member, you say what state they're from. That is the rules of this committee. Thank you. Mr. Miller.
Wow. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, how you doing? It's good to see you.
Good to see you, Congressman.
You as well. I got to tell you, if I had to hang my hat in credibility on the Congressional Budget Office, man, I would be pretty embarrassed. Let's go through that just a little bit, and I'll dive into my remarks here. The Congressional Budget Office is as credible as the Central Broadcasting Organization, which went bankrupt. Last time they did an assessment on the 2017 TCJA, they were off by, gosh, what was it? The number was so small. It was around $1.2 trillion that the CBO is off. I'll let that speak for itself. Thank you for being here, Mr. Secretary.
And Congressman, I would point out that they were wrong. The IRA cost thus far has been more than 3x their projection.
Oh, as I said it, Mr. Secretary.
Well, the green subsidies in the IRA.
If I had to hang my hat and my credibility on the CBO, I would be embarrassed, and that is all we're hearing. So let me get into the remarks, and thank you for being here. Over the past few years, we've seen the rapid rise of digital assets across the financial landscape. More and more Americans, from everyday investors to institutional asset managers, are engaging with these technologies, and not just for speculation, but as a part of a broader shift toward more accessible, decentralized financial tools. And it's not just individuals. Increasingly, United States businesses are integrating cryptocurrencies into their corporate strategies. This trend is unfolding across industries, but it's not without risk, as we know. Without clear accounting and tax guidance, these decisions introduce new layers of market exposure, not just for shareholders, but for the financial system as a whole. It has never been more evident we need clarity and parity within the tax code. The first question I have, Mr. Secretary, experts estimate that enacting a clear federal stablecoin framework could unlock up to $2 trillion in new demand for U.S. Treasuries, largely from institutional and global buyers seeking high-quality collateral. How do you view the potential benefits of stablecoin legislation in strengthening domestic demand for Treasuries and supporting broader access to credit products such as mortgages that Americans rely on?
Congressman Miller, that is a fantastic question. And I have been in touch, a lot of discussions with your colleagues in the Senate from London over the weekend as they push through their stablecoin legislation, urging them to get it to a vote as quickly as possible, because I believe that U.S. dollar-backed stablecoins, as you said, collateralized with Treasury bills, could be a substantial portion, or create a substantial new buyer for U.S. Treasury bills, and I think equally as important, it can lock in dollar dominance over history, there's been a series of events that have kept the U.S. as a reserve currency, and I think passing this important stablecoin legislation could be that event for the 2020s.
I could not agree more with you. That's why I'm excited to see the push for it. Would you agree, Mr. Secretary, that pairing that type of stablecoin legislation with clear, modernized tax guidance for digital assets would offer the greatest chance of encouraging responsible investment, giving both individuals and institutions the confidence and certainty they would need?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I feel as well. I want to shift to our one big beautiful bill, Mr. Secretary. As we look toward the expiration of key provisions of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, I'd appreciate your thoughts on how extending the expanded standard deduction would improve middle-class families and how Treasury is evaluating the trade-offs associated with that policy.
Well, we've seen the numbers, and the largest tax increase in history would add the great distress to working families due to the economic distress and to many of the provisions, as we just discussed, the child tax credit dropping from $2,000 to $1,000, and I don't even like to think about the havoc that it would wreak within the economy, especially within small businesses.
And, we hear a lot about, how this is only, a tax cut for a certain, demographic or socioeconomic class within our society. The average American, if this were to not go through, would receive the largest tax hike in our country's history. That goes from the person who has $0 in their checking account to the most wealthiest individual that we have in the world. I just want to make that abundantly clear. This piece of legislation, without its support in getting through, will give the American people the largest tax hike in government history, and that is what we are preventing with this legislation. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and I yield back.
Good. Thank you.
Mr. Bean.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. A happy birthday to you and a very good afternoon, Ways and Means Committee. Mr. Secretary, welcome. I'm sorry you have to put up with this, including the profane language that we listen to a lot of folks up here. I don't know, their mom must not have taught them any manners. You, sir, could be anywhere. You don't have to do this. The only thing I can imagine is love of country. And so I want to say thank you. A grateful nation says thank you for your service.
It's an honor.
And thank you for trying. I know it bothers you as a financial guy, and I was a former banker. It bothers you that this country continues to go in the wrong direction financially. So thank you for trying to turn the wheel as little as we possibly can. And I think we're all finding out that wheel can get sticky at times. So thank you for putting some extra muscle in it. And part of turning that wheel is the one big beautiful bill, which, again, thank you for your service. There's so many great things in it. I'm going to ask you that, what's your favorite in just a bit. But first of all, I've talked to some restaurant owners that have confusion and angst over the tax on tips. And so once this legislation is enacted, Treasury will need to update its administrative guidance regarding the treatment of tips, particularly regarding the adjustable gratuities. You know, when the bill is already pre-filled out of tips. And will you and Treasury, I know you're going to head this direction anyway, commit that Treasury will clarify its guidance so recommended gratuities such as those added to the bills of large parties where the customer retains the ability to adjust the amount are treated as tips rather than service charges, so the intended target that Congress wants to do it is you don't pay tax on tips. Mr. Secretary, what say you?
Congressman, we have a lot of data on tip income, so this should be a relatively easy endeavor, and we will work to make this as seamless and as efficient as possible so that the working people who receive tips, that it will be expedited and that the small business owners will experience as little paperwork as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. That's the right answer. I listened to you. You've been speaking and you've done marvelous work because you and the DOGE effort have said even before your tenure, Treasury was out of control. Not even the most essential information in its computer disbursement systems, which has led to over $165 billion in improper payments just last year. We double paid things, and then once we paid them, we couldn't figure out why we paid them. I listened to you of what's needed, and guess what? I've got great news, Mr. Secretary. Tomorrow, I, along with Joni Ernst, we're both involved in the DOGE caucuses of each house, is coming up with a financial payment bill that says on every bill that the United States pays, we'll have a brief description of the purpose of the payment, the appropriations account which the payment is to be withdrawn, the payment reported on usaspending.gov so it's transparent and the world can see where we're spending the money, and then an annual update of all information related to these payments. It's exciting. It's what you asked for. My question is, what do we need to do to get you on board this bill? And you can say you had me at hello if you want to, but how does that sound? Are you excited about that bill?
Sir, I'm excited about accountability on the payments. When I arrived at Treasury, there's something called a TAS, Treasury Accounting Symbol. One third of the disbursements that we sent out every year did not have a TAS. Without a TAS, a payment cannot be linked back to an appropriation. So there are approximately, imagine Treasury, the TGA is the checking account for the United States of America. Above that sits approximately 450 entities, whether it's agencies, that they just send down payment requests and they'd automatically been sent out. For the first time, we asked that it act like a commercially viable enterprise and that task numbers be assigned. And eventually, the goal should be, perhaps you and Senator Ernst, once you pass this, your second goal could be that these entities that sit above Treasury could all pass an audit.
No, amen. We're working with your team now to make sure that everything that you want in that bill is set. So thank you very much. It sounds like we're going to make a great team. Last thing, anything that else we need to know on the one big beautiful bill? Is there any misinformation you want to clear up, Mr. Secretary?
Well, I don't think I have the time to clear up the misinformation, but I will say that I believe that the economic impetus, the certainty, because there is a duality between the critics of this administration. All I hear is tariffs. It's like TDS has become tariff derangement syndrome, and that all I hear about is uncertainty from tariffs, but then the same side wants to give us uncertainty on taxes. So let's get this bill done and get the certainty on taxes. We will have certainty on tariffs within some window over the coming quarters.
Amen,
and
Mr.
then
Secretary.
then the U.S. economy can realize its full potential.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I yield back. Thank you for being here today.
Ms. Plaskett.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the witness for being here this afternoon with us. And making yourself available and answering questions and engaging with the members of this committee. I first wanted to share that, I think back on the last administration, this administration, the transition. There's always going to be changes, ideas and changes, mechanisms in which we're done. But I think we need to talk truth about what the numbers were in each one of those. Now, we know that at the time of President Trump's inauguration, unemployment was at less than 4%. Inflation was below 3%. And the numbers that have been put out about where inflation is now has not really changed month to month. When we look at CPI, the Bureau of Labor statistics, those numbers have not changed significantly from the downward trajectory that happened from 2020. We have continually gone down in inflation. Economic growth at the time of inauguration was at 2.8% in real terms. And that was, according to World Analysis, one of the fastest growing economies in the world. The bottom 20% of workers saw the largest real wage gains during the Biden administration. We're going to give Jacket's jacket here in this committee. Additionally, we have seen since January 20th that the stock market overall has gone down 1.3%, and gas has gone up.
Ma'am, that's incorrect.
Excuse me. Let me get something straight with you first here. I've seen you interrupt everyone. When you come to someone's house, you respect their rules. And in this house, we don't interrupt individuals. And you're not going to interrupt my time. I'm going to give you time to respond. You may want to jot down some notes about things that you don't agree with me on so that you can respond to them at that time. But while I'm speaking, as the person holding this time, you will refrain from speaking, sir, until I am done, and then I will give you time to speak, okay?
Look forward to facts.
Thank you. I'll look forward to your response, whether they're factual or incorrect either. Now, one of the things that I noticed that the president, our present president, has said that he was going to do was going to bring down the cost of living. But as we all know, costs have not gone down. Whether they have remained stagnant at the amount that they were at the time of the inauguration or before, or they have gone up, real costs have not gone down for the American individuals. I know that my colleagues want to talk about in this bill what is happening in terms of their support for the American worker. There's a discussion I hear from several colleagues that if this legislation is not passed, it will then trigger the largest tax hike. That's because you made the largest tax cut in 2017 with this bill. And it's not to say that we cannot negotiate, as Congress has used to do, something in between there. It does not have to be this bill. It could, in fact, be something in between there. But that's not what we're doing here in this Congress at this time. Additionally, we have seen that, there's discussion about overtime taxes, overtime, the credit that's going. We know that only 12% of hourly workers receive overtime. And then the discussion about tips, which is only going to affect 2.5% of American workers, and only 40% of tip earners actually file federal taxes. So we are not going to affect everyone that we need to affect. Unfortunately, everyday Americans, the outcome of the supposedly strategic legislation that we have here is very predictable. We're watching the cost of bread, bacon, butter rise, egg prices continuing to go up, and the rising cost is not going to happen. One individual who I follow, James Serwicki, a classmate of mine actually from prep school who was at Yale, discusses that there's no acceleration of economic growth in this legislation because there's not being meaningful cutting of tax rates. We are going to be reducing spending, that's correct, but there are intended consequences to that as well. Additionally, let's talk about DOGE. $2 trillion, $1 trillion, 150 billion. Those were what we said the savings were going to be. I'm concerned that with this legislation as well, we are not going to see the real numbers. The numbers that are put out are not going to be, in fact, the real ones. Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Mr. Murrian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Secretary, for being here today. You didn't get a chance to respond to Ms. Plaskett, so I'm going to give you a chance to respond, Secretary Bessent. Where did she go wrong in her statement?
Well, first of all, I would fire the staffer who did that chart because it stopped in February 2025, and prices are down substantially since then. But that's an inconvenient truth. Secondly, the S&P, if the Congresswoman would care to check Bloomberg, the stock market, as judged by the S&P, which is the most widely held index by American 401ks, is up on the year. Up.
It is up month by month.
No. Excuse me, ma'am. It's my time.
And we don't interrupt. Excuse me, we don't interrupt is what I was learned. Since January 1st, it is my business for 40 years to know what the stock market does, and it is up on the year. So
Thank you for that clarification, Secretary. I want to go back and look a little bit more history, some recent history. When Democrats had the trifecta just a few years ago as part of their Inflation Reduction Act, which actually skyrocketed inflation, they enacted their so-called Corporate Alternative Minimum Tax, or CAMT as it's known, a wildly complex and burdensome 15% minimum tax for job creators across America. This policy was so difficult to implement that even Biden's Treasury Department could not finalize regulations after 2 years of the law being enacted. That's why I was pleased, Secretary, to see that the IRS last week released guidance that provides relief from the CAMT. The guidance provides tax penalty relief for the 2025 year, but perhaps more importantly, the IRS announced that it will not finalize the Biden administration's proposed CAMT regulations in their current form, but will instead issue additional guidance in response to taxpayer comments. I know I personally heard from several constituents concerned about this disastrous minimum tax. Secretary Bessent, could you please elaborate on the recent action that the Treasury Department and the IRS took to provide taxpayer relief from the CAMT and preview any future action the administration might take?
Sir, the CAMT is part of an overall simplification for businesses, and we have tried to do that across the board where we've seen it, as several members on the Republican side of the aisle have pointed out. This is a pro-business administration. I would categorize the previous administration as few business people, academics, career politicians.
Secretary, let's go back even further in history. In 1963, President John F. Kennedy faced a critical economic situation due to years of excessively high tax rates, wasteful government spending, and undulating unemployment rates. His proposed solution at the time, what was it? It was lowering taxes, both for individuals and for corporations. And by doing this, and in doing this is what he said. He said, quote, "This will restore an idea that has helped make our country great, that a person who devotes his efforts to increasing his income, thereby adding to the nation's income and wealth, should be able to retain a reasonable share of the results." I happen to believe that more hardworking Americans need to retain more and more of what they earn, and the more of that they retain, the better. It brings liberty to their lives. This is the idea precisely that I think President Trump is trying to get to through his Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2017, and then once again in the One Big Beautiful Bill. If you want to increase innovation, spur economic growth, and raise overall revenues, you lower taxes for everybody and put more money in the hands of hardworking Americans, small businesses, and farmers. Would you agree with that proposition, Secretary Bessent? And would you say that the One Big Beautiful Bill is perhaps the most pro-growth, pro-worker, pro-business legislation since the TCJA, maybe even more so?
Congressman Moran, what you are alluding to, the President Kennedy said was, and I will tie it back to this horrendous inflation that we saw during the Biden administration. His economic advisor was a Yale professor, James Tobin, and he asked Professor Tobin, what is the governing factor on government spending? It's inflation, isn't it? And I'm afraid that Secretary Yellen, who was a dissertation student of Professor Tobin, did not heed that lesson as we got the great inflation during the past period from this government spending. And look, I think that this is the nature of U.S. enterprise. This is why we have the greatest economy in the world. This is why Europe cannot get out of its own way. China has a command and control economy, that we push for Americans to be able to keep more of their own money, to simplify starting businesses, and that is what we are trying to do. And that's why, as I said, trade, tax, but deregulation is going to be very important here, because what we are finding is that it is very difficult. One of the reasons it's difficult to make or build things in this country is because of regulation. If you try to build a pipeline, you need certainty. that for us to be energy dominant, to build an electric grid, if we are going to be the AI superpower that we are on our way to being, it will require a substantial increase in generation capacity. So permitting new electrical generation, but equally as important, permitting the transmission. We need government to be a partner, not an adversary.
I wholeheartedly agree, Secretary Besant. The more liberty for our businesses and our individuals, our families, and our farmers, the better for our economy. It spurs innovation and economic growth. With that, I yield back. Thank you.
Mr. Swazi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. It's been a long day. We appreciate the time that you've spent with us, especially considering your travel schedule and how tired you must be. Thank you very much for your service to our country. We're very grateful to you. You complimented one of our colleagues earlier about it's great to see something bipartisan happening. There's very little bipartisan things going on right now, but to make bipartisan things happen, you have to talk to the other side. You have to negotiate with each other. And every problem we face in our country is complicated, and you can't solve a complicated problem.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sertovan. That is a live look inside a House committee hearing for Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. He's testifying regarding the fiscal budget. Let's turn now to New York. We brought this as breaking news, and this is a press conference for one of the accusers of Harvey Weinstein. This comes after a partial verdict was reached in a Manhattan courtroom in Harvey Weinstein's sex crimes retrial. Let's take a listen in
the judicial system, in a system that allows things to happen that do deny survivors justice for what has been done to them. But that work is still going to be done, and the movement is going to fight continuously, and we are going to charge forward. All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you.
All right, so that press conference just wrapped up there. Again, a partial verdict reached this afternoon in Harvey Weinstein's sex crimes retrial. We also are learning from NBC4 New York. Deliberations are set to continue. Again, the jury reached a partial verdict in Harvey Weinstein's New York sex crimes retrial, finding him guilty on one of the three charges he faced, but has been ordered to continue deliberating on another charge. All right, so that press conference for one of the accusers just wrapped up there outside of the courthouse in Manhattan. Let's turn back to the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. He's testifying in front of the House committee, in front of a House committee. Let's take a listen in.
What was it?
As I say at Treasury, we move deliberately and fix things.
Right, so they didn't move very deliberately, did they? They moved kind of scattershot.
The Congressman, I have the benefit of the those people who are full Treasury employees who either I or
I understand that, and I appreciate that. I want to ask you about Mr. Musk's overseeing of DOGE.
But my senior staff interviewed these DOGE people who are not DOGE people, they are Treasury people, have been incredibly
And I believe you, Mr. Secretary. Do you think that Mr. Musk did a good job overseeing DOGE? Because it's been reported that you said he was a fraud, that the whole thing was a fraud. Do you agree with that statement, or is that inappropriately reported?
Fake news.
Fake news, okay. So, Mr. Secretary, I agree with 75% of the stuff that's in the big bill that you guys talk about. We call it the big ugly bill, not the big beautiful bill. But there's three things that I really don't like about it a lot. I don't like that we're continuing the cuts in tax breaks that we're giving to the wealthiest Americans from 39.6 down to 37. I think that's a deficit-producing, unnecessary tax cut that's going to just increase the deficit and not do anything to increase economic productivity in our country. The second thing I don't like is that we're cutting so much Medicaid for so many people in need, and we're cutting the food assistance program for so many people in need. And the third thing I don't like is this whole thing we've been hearing a lot about today, the deficits that have been created. Now, you don't agree with the CBO. We've heard that several times. You also disagree with the Committee for Responsible Budget, who said that there's going to be a $3 trillion deficit from this. You disagree with that also, right? Yes. And you disagree with the Yale Budget Lab. You went to Yale. You don't agree with the Yale Budget Lab. They say there's going to be a $3 trillion deficit from this. Do you disagree with them also?
There are a lot of things I disagree with Yale on these.
Do you disagree with the Penn-Wharton budget model, who said there's going to be a $3 trillion deficit from this bill?
Yes.
You disagree with Elon Musk, who you supposedly do get along with now. It will massively increase the already gigantic deficit to $2.5 trillion and burden American citizens with crushingly unsustainable debt. Do you disagree with Mr. Musk on that issue?
Yes.
Do you disagree with Ray Dalio, who said that this is unsustainable?
I agree with Ray Dalio that we need to get our fiscal house in order.
Do you disagree with Jamie Dimon, who says it's going to cause a crack in the bond markets?
I met with Mr. Dimon the other day, and he wasn't necessarily referring to government finances.
Well, he said there's going to be a crack that's going to take place in either 6 months or 6 years. And let's ask you, when do you think that's going to happen?
I believe he was.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. We want to shift away from Washington, D.C. and take you to Los Angeles, where L.A. Mayor Karen Bass and the regional mayors are taking part in this press conference. Is what they're calling a unified call for a stop to the reckless raids, they're calling, and the deployment of federalized troops, Now, mayors from all over the country have spoken out regarding President Trump's deployment of the National Guard there in L.A. amidst the unrest there the past week. Let's take a listen into this press conference and what's happening now. It seems like they're taking questions from reporters there. Let's take a listen in.
Who are scared. We have parents, we have children. Now our children are out of school. And what are they going to do? Are they going to be kept at home just because, the raids are continuing here in our communities? That's unacceptable. We need to continue being united and let Washington, D.C. understand that this is a community of immigrants. We are all immigrants. I am an immigrant myself. I came to the United States, and I am working for our community. The current action of ICE treats immigrants as criminals. We are not criminals. We are hardworking people. We came to the United States to work, to better our families. The humanizing and targeting people who often threat Southgate stands with our surrounding cities and to all our community. The people of the city of Southgate, I'm talking to you. You are not alone. We are here with you, and we are going to be helping and also making sure that everyone is safe. So with that, I am going to be calling up Mayor from Ventura, Jeanette Sanchez Palacio.
Good afternoon or good morning still, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Mayor Bass, for inviting us. Thank you to all the mayors who are here throughout California. And while you may see many of us, there are many more who are not here, who could not be here with us today, but who support this effort in being united together. We are outraged and heartbroken by the recent and ongoing ICE activities targeting immigrant families in our community. These actions are not only inhumane, but they are also an affront to the values we uphold in Ventura, but also throughout the state of California. The city in Ventura in our region is an agricultural region. They are sustained by labor, resilience, and cultural richness of immigrant communities. And when our workforce lives are in fear,
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. It looks like that shot froze. So what's happening there? Again, and the shot went down. That's a press conference out of L.A. Mayor Bass, along with other mayors from the region, making a unified call for what they are calling reckless raids and the deployment of federalized troops. They're calling for an end to that. So that press conference is happening live. But right now, we actually have it back up. So let's take you back there to that press conference.
and they are our loved ones. And as elected officials representing various cities across the state, we have come here together to condemn the separation of immigrant families. No one deserves to live in fear, simply for seeking a better life or for seeking a better life for themselves or their loved ones. And so we call for
All right, it looks like we're still having problems with that shot. Again, that's a press conference out in L.A. with Mayor Karen Bass and other mayors from the region coming together just basically to tell the federal government stop the raids there that are happening in L.A. that are sparking some of the unrest there in L.A. with protests for the past week. All right, so we want to shift back now to the Karen retrial. This is on the stand the defense's final witness, from what we are getting from NBC 10 Boston. So this is defense crash expert Andrew Wentzler, a biomedical engineer for ARCCA. And he testified at the end of yesterday. It's been on the stand for all day today. And again, this is the defense's final witness. Let's take a listen in.
Could cause an abrasion.
It's possible if you had enough punctures and holes in the sweater to correspond with the abrasions on the arm. That would be, I suppose, that could be a possibility.
In your testing, not to belabor it, I'm just going to show you one. I want to show you video E. Could we go to video E, please? Stop. In video E, the arm that is sticking straight out, who determined that angle, Dr. Wolf?
Yes, well, we positioned it just so it would impact in the general area of what was shown in Dr. Welcher's paint test study, which apparently is irrelevant and doesn't show the alleged position of how the arm was at impact. But yes, we positioned it in that manner.
When you say we, did you have input on the positioning of that, or did Dr. Wolf do it?
Well, I had input into how we were going to position it. It would probably be both of us, I would say.
So you and Dr. Wolf chose to position the arm straight out, correct?
In that test we did, yes.
Is there a glass in Randy's hand?
There is not, no.
A drinking glass, no?
No.
In any of your studies, did you have a drinking glass in Randy's hand?
We did not have a drinking glass in the dummy's hand, no.
Okay. And you see when the taillight is shattering, those red things falling down. What are those?
Those are part of the taillight.
Continue a little bit, please. Stop. Did you count how many taillight pieces broke?
We didn't count the taillight pieces. We counted how many punctures or holes there were in the sweatshirt, which was 0.
If you had done this test and changed the arm angle, do you expect the damage would look different as far as the brakes in that taillight?
Well, we conducted a number of tests. It may look somewhat different, sure.
If you conducted this test and moved the arm angle, not another test, this test, but you moved the arm angle, do you expect that the brake would look different?
That the brake would look different?
Yes.
It could look a little different. I mean, certainly the brakes looked a little different in the test, but they were comparable to each other.
You do not know how John O'Keefe was standing that night, do you?
Well.
Objection. No, I'm going to allow that.
You do not know how John O'Keefe was standing that night, do you?
If he was standing, if the impact occurred, then no, nobody knows how he would have been standing.
You would not know what his arm angle was, would you?
No.
You would not know the exact speed of any vehicle that hit him that night, would you?
Objection. Sustained.
The debris, the broken taillight, is that traveling in a consistent or a different direction?
What do you mean consistent or different?
Is it all going in the same direction, or is it going in different directions?
No, there's some spread to the debris.
So the pieces don't all fall right in a pile with each other, do they?
They do not, no.
Continue, please. Stop. Do the majority of the pieces land on Randy?
No, they do not.
And so as they fall, if Randy were to fall, many of those pieces would not be among the immediate area of his body, would they?
If the dummy fell right there, no, they would not be.
Okay. Now, the dummy can't fall because the dummy is on a forklift, correct?
It's suspended like a pendulum, correct.
And you see in your test that the tail light, at what you say is 24 miles per hour, can be broken without the dummy's knees touching the vehicle. Isn't that fair to say?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. You can't tell the full movement and fall of this dummy the way you've set up this test, can you?
Well, knowing the physics, you can certainly determine or estimate where it would be, but no, you could release it and it would fall primarily straight down. It would twist and it would fall down.
Is there something that could affect the dummy if you let it fall? Is there something that could affect its movement after being hit?
Like what?
Like, could its feet be twisted and then hit another object like a curb?
Well, there's going to be very little lateral movement of its feet, but even if it did, then it's still going to fall over right where it is.
Can you continue, please? Can you see the feet, doctor?
Yes.
Are they twisting?
They are, yes.
Is that because of the rotation of Randy after he struck?
Yeah, that's the rotation of Randy. And again, as you said, that's not a normal person because there's no normal force acting on the dummy. We just have it barely touching. So a normal individual, you aren't going to twist to that extent because this is a dummy which is suspended with just a little contact on the ground.
And after being contacted by a vehicle enough to break the light, could it cause a person to stagger backwards?
I mean, you're making some suppositions here. There's no evidence that would occur in this case, and not if you're spinning like that. You're not going to stagger backwards. First, you're going to spin if you get hit with your arm, as I described in my direct. But is it possible? I can't say it's impossible, but there's no evidence of that.
Could a person stumble backwards after being hit?
I'm going to allow that.
What do you mean by backwards? Because you'd be spinning. So what direction is backwards?
Could a person get their foot caught on a curb, and sneaker come off, and then stagger backwards and fall on their head?
Objection, Your Honor. Yes.
I'm going to allow that.
Doctor?
Can you answer that?
I mean, I guess you could somehow predict or have a possibility of almost anything happening. You could say someone could get hit by a car and do a couple of somersaults into the yard. I mean, there's no evidence of that, so it's just supposition, but I won't say it's impossible.
You think John O'Keefe did somersaults into the front yard of 34th Avenue? Is that what you're telling us, Doctor?
No, I don't think he even got hit by the car, sir.
That's not what I'm asking. I've heard that. I'm asking you, he did somersaults into the front yard.
No, there's no evidence of what he did.
Your Honor, come sidebar quickly before I start.
Okay. Oops.
As we get towards the end of the week here of the Karen Reed retrial, we're potentially going to see this go to the jury. But we do want to turn our attention to okay, well, it looks like we got a new feed that's coming in, some reaction to the partial verdict in the Harvey Weinstein sex assault retrial. A quick recap. There was a unanimous guilty verdict of sexual assault against one woman, and then there was a not guilty verdict of assaulting another more than a decade ago. Let's listen in. Looks like we have... Okay. For some more context, it looks like we have one of the accusers alongside Gloria Allred, it appears to be. So let's listen in right now.
Two witnesses. Me Too witnesses are witnesses to uncharged crimes or prior bad acts. But we see that although there were no such witnesses in this case because it was not permitted, still the jury convicted. That had to mean that they believed Mimi's testimony beyond a reasonable doubt, and so much evidence that she presented from this incident years ago. So that's awesome. We're very grateful.
Yeah.
Do you want to say something else?
No.
Okay, go ahead. Yes. You can hear.
You know, it was interesting that the first time I was very, very worried about how I would feel seeing him in court, and this time I was worried again. I just didn't know what to expect in terms of what would come up. The first time it was something is happening. The view of Mr. Weinstein was obscured by the judge's kind of booth, whereas this time he was constantly in my view. But ultimately, you know, when I was finally in there, I really didn't feel anything. I felt very little, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay. One last question, and then we'll go. All right. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Yeah. Hi, Gloria.
Pardon me?
All right, so it looks like some of the speaking here, the reaction to the partial verdict in the Harvey Weinstein retrial is, I guess it looks to be fully wrapping up. We were kind of seeing folks coming and going for the last several moments, but from what we can tell, this is done for sure. We want to turn now to weather impacts because I think we're going to get a nice break on the weather front, I guess, relatively speaking, considering we've kind of been on alert for the last several days for various wet weather impacts and severe weather impacts. So let's get a look at what we can expect today through the rest of the evening and in the rest of few days too as well. Here's a look right now.
Good Wednesday afternoon. We've got a seasonable afternoon on the way. You can see departure from average. High temperatures are mainly going to be around that range, just 1 degree warmer than the normal high for this time of year, closer to around the Charlotte metro, with highs today responding to that sunshine, middle to upper 80s across the metro area, and upper 70s is what we'll do for the high country with a lot of sunshine to go around. Here's our setup for today. A cold front will continue to sink down to the south while a high pressure system sticks up to the north, and that's going to bring some slightly drier air that you'll notice from the mountains all the way to portions of the metro area. But as this cold front continues down to the south, you'll notice for most southern counties there is going to be a chance for an isolated shower or thunderstorm later on this afternoon and evening. But as we look ahead, especially to Thursday and the weekend, this is going to be our setup. We've got this Bermuda high pressure system sitting way off to the east of Charlotte, and this is going to drive in warm and tropical air not only across the Carolinas but towards the southeast as well, bringing us the typical summertime showers and storms we normally see for this time of year, mainly meaning this is going to be scattered, hit or miss, and any storm that does develop could certainly pack a punch. So for today, here's that isolated coverage I was talking about, especially for our southern counties. It's few and far in between, but by the time we get to Thursday, it's much more active as these storms respond to that daytime heating. It could even linger into early Friday morning, but we'll do it all again for Friday afternoon and evening, as well as Saturday, Sunday, and even to portions of your Monday. Best way to show this is going to be on atmospheric moisture. So like I mentioned, thanks to that high pressure system sitting aloft, it's going to bring in some slightly drier air, especially the further northwest you go up towards the mountains. This won't last long. By tomorrow, we'll start to feel more of that tropical air, and this will continue all the way through the weekend, all the way down into the coast. And that's going to drive these dew points way up in the 70s Thursday all the way through Monday. And how that's going to be impacting you is going to be with those heat index values. So for today, like I mentioned, probably going to be the more comfortable day to get outdoors with that peak heat index value at 90. By the time we get to Thursday, 94, 95 for Friday, and we'll basically stay into the middle 90s all the way through the start of next week. For today, mix of sunshine and clouds. Again, high temperatures, upper 80s, but feeling more like 90 across many locations. At 9 p.m., falling to around 80 degrees if you do have any late night plans. Don't skip out on that SPF for today. UV index will be still very high. That is a 9 and a burn time of about 20 minutes. So sunscreen, hats, and sunglasses will all be needed for today. Looking past at the past 5 days, you can see high temperatures have been hanging around in the upper 80s, even peaking with our first 90-degree day this past Saturday. As we look ahead to the next 5 days, you'll see high temperatures still hanging on into the middle to upper 80s, but with those dew points in the 70s, that's what's going to make it feel more like the middle 90s, with daily storm chances in the forecast from tomorrow all the way through this upcoming weekend. And what that means for you is don't cancel any of your plans, especially if you're planning out your Father's Day. But do keep in mind there is going to be a storm risk for both Saturday and Sunday. High temperatures will be in the upper 80s. Be a great time to download that WCNC app so you can track these showers and storms in real time, especially as you head out the door. In this 7-day forecast, again, a fairly nice day on the way. Highs upper 80s. Tomorrow night we'll likely see another round of showers and thunderstorms, and this will continue each and every day all the way through early next week, which could pack a punch in terms of heavy rainfall, lightning, and some gusty winds. So make sure to stay weather aware.
Okay, folks, hopefully that is a good amount of information for you to prepare and plan out the next few days for yourself. We want to turn to a new feed here in Live Impact News, and this is coming to us from LA, where, of course, for the last several days we've been talking about the protests underway, folks protesting against the immigration sweeps from ICE. We've been hearing from the mayor as well as other city officials and other representatives. Let's listen in now here on Live Impact News.
Estoy con la ciudad de City of Vernon. My name is Leticia Lopez, and I'm here with City of Vernon as a council member, and I stand in solidarity with my elected officials and Mayor Bass. Thank you for bringing us together.
Good morning, buenos días. My name is Crystal Larios. I am with the Vernon City Council. Mi nombre es Crystal Larios. Estoy con el Consejo Municipal de la Ciudad de Vernon. I am a proud daughter of immigrants. Soy una hija de papás inmigrantes. Muy orgullosamente. Estoy con ustedes. I stand with you. And I pledge all my support to the elected staff and everyone doing everything we can to help.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll open it up for questions now. And let me just say that we will provide everyone's contact information up here, but, because we only have a few minutes for questions, but we want you to have complete access. Yes, are you going to?
Yeah, we're going to send an email and
do you have any comments from the rate today from that happens today in the morning in the city of Downey?
I'm sorry, do I have what?
Do you have any comments about, or do you have any reports about the rate that happened today in the morning in the city of Downey?
No, but I think that the mayor from Downey did address that and can address that a little later.
Next question is related.
I know yesterday you spoke about trying to contact President Trump. Were you able to make any contact at all with anyone in the administration?
I have actually a call in the next few minutes, not with him, but to get that call set up.
And what were you planning on telling the Secretary? Can you tell us about that?
Well, yeah, that I want to speak to the president and that I want him to understand the significance of what is happening here. You know, there are reports that if all of the military that have been designated to be deployed, if you add them all up, it's more military than are serving today in Iraq. And the money that is being spent, $130 million, all of our cities could use that money.
I was hoping you could speak to the fact that some people have described what's going on as rioting, whether you agree or disagree with that terminology. If you disagree with it, I was hoping you could confirm that no one is being booked under Penal Code 404, which is the rioting penal code.
I have not heard that. I've not heard of anybody being booked under that. You know, we established a curfew last night, and there were over 100 arrests, but they weren't for looting. They weren't for vandalism. They were for failure to disperse, as well as a curfew violation. So what I'm hoping is that people got the message that we're serious, and we won't even have those arrests tonight.
And what do you think about the rioting terminology?
Well, let me just tell you that the picture that is attempted to being portrayed, and all of us are impacted by this. If you look at TV and you see people who are demonstrating, some inappropriately, some violently, which I believe that anybody that's involved in violence or looting or vandalism is not supporting the cause of immigrants. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing that, because they know that that can trigger an even greater reaction from the administration. And so that is a picture you know in downtown Los Angeles, because we are here. You know that this is isolated to several streets in downtown Los Angeles. The curfew that we put in place yesterday is about 6 square miles of a city that is 500 square miles. So the portrayal is that all of our cities are in chaos, rioting is happening everywhere, and it is a lie.
So do you disagree with that terminology?
We gotta go here and then we're gonna come over to this side.
Clearly, you don't want the National Guard or the Marines here, but
they're not needed.
Yeah, but since they are here, is there any line of communication set up between your office or Chief McDonald's office and whoever is in charge of the Marines and National Guard? Is there a line of communication?
Okay, first of all, the last I talked to the chief, there was no line of communication with the Marines. The line of communication is with the federal National Guard, and you know they have one mission here, and that is to protect one building downtown. They weren't needed for that then, they're not needed now. When we did the curfew last night, it was all local law enforcement.
Do you believe there should be a line of communication?
Absolutely. I mean, well, first of all, I don't think it should be happening at all. But yes, there should be a line of communication.
We're gonna go to this side and look.
So U.S. Attorney Bill Cheney did announce some charges today.
Oh, he did? Okay.
And he said, quote, when protesting crosses the line into violence, the penalties will be severe. He's talking about up to 10 years in prison for possessing Molotov cocktails. At the same time, Mr. President, who on day one pardoned the January 6th rioters. Is there a double standard there, and what do you think about it?
Well, I think you just illustrated the double standard. And given that I was there on January 6th and you saw an insurrection take place, the idea that this, what is happening here, is an insurrection is just false. And I think it is deliberately false. I don't think they're confused.
We're going to come down here to the post and then Craig in the back.
Sorry. Thank you. Madam Mayor, the protests are spreading from Los Angeles to other cities.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, what does that say about how the Trump administration is handling not only these protests, but their immigration policy?
Well, I mean, I think that the other cities recognize if the nation's second largest city and our region that has 88 cities in it and is larger than 40 states, that's LA County, if it can happen here, then what does that say about states whose population doesn't even match the population of our county?
We're going to go to Craig, Josh, and then maybe.
Good morning, Mayor. The curfew enforcement last night, you were live with me on KNX for some time. It was very late. It looked very much like it was successful in achieving its goals. I want to know what your take is on what unfolded last night, how it went, and then secondarily, is this curfew order going to be extended? You had said it first, you'd review it today, potentially a few more days, and then you also, I think, indicated last night on KNX that you thought maybe it could end by the weekend.
Well,
at least
yes.
that was maybe a hope.
So let me just say that the emergency declaration that I signed yesterday does not have a time limit to it. And so the curfews will go on as long as they are needed. But you know, it's really kind of interdependent on what the response is from the federal side. If there are raids that continue, if there are soldiers marching up and down our street, I would imagine that the curfew will continue. What I'm hoping is that Angelino's got the message last night that we are serious. The fact that the arrests last night were relatively minor, I am hoping that we won't have any arrests tonight.
Did it work last night as you expected?
Yes, it did.
We're going to go to Josh, AB, and then Adam.
Mayor, I know you've asked the administration to stop the raids, but have you gotten any indication that the raids are going to stop?
No. As a matter of fact, I think all of us probably have the same. I mean, at this point in time, we're functioning on rumors. And so the latest rumor that I'm aware of is it's going to last for 30 days, but I really do have to say it's a rumor. Has anybody heard anything different? Right, but you see the point, we don't know. And that uncertainty creates fear and terror in our people.
And I know you don't know what the Marines are going to do.
No, I do not.
Are you open to the idea of suggesting that maybe they assist the LAPD in enforcing the curfews?
Absolutely not. As one of our Marines who is up here, they are trained in warfare on foreign lands, not domestic. They cannot arrest. I don't know what role that they would play. And then just think about having the military here. When you see what's going on around here, if you drive a few blocks outside of downtown, you don't know that anything is happening in the city at all.
Down AP and then right here.
Yeah, Pat, can you just talk about the metrics that you're considering for lifting the curfew? You said things generally went well last night. Do you see that again?
The metrics for lifting the curfew are twofold. Number one, a night where there's no arrest, okay? But number two, it's interdependent on what happens with the administration.
And then, you describe these arrests as minor.
Minor meaning unlawful assembly and curfew.
Right. So not looting,
No, of course not.
But we did see, police on horseback, police firing, projectiles at seemingly peaceful demonstrators last night. So what do you say to people who see this as excessive force against people who are, out in the streets protesting the same stuff that you're describing as unconscionable?
Well, what I do believe is that we need to evaluate what has happened. One thing about our cities is that there's cameras everywhere. So individuals might not have been arrested on the day they committed the crime. It doesn't mean they won't coming down the line. But there have been allegations, and we need to check into each one of those.
Down in front here, and then we'll go over, and then
Max Badger, Bloomberg. Do you have any idea how much extra LAPD spending has accrued since Friday? How will that impact the budget for the upcoming fiscal year? Additionally, there have been reports that police hitting journalists and other people.
Oh, yes.
Will the next budget include extra funding for police liabilities, which strain this current budget?
Right. Well, let me just tell you that I don't have any idea how much is being spent in overtime now. Again, unnecessary. Didn't need to happen in the first place. I am concerned about the budget impacts. We had almost $1 billion deficit here, and so I'm concerned about that. But there's no way of knowing, and there's also no way of knowing when it's going to end.
I think it's a political time.
So you talked about how you don't really know when the raids are going to stop. This is a signature policy of the Trump administration. Do you have any indication that this is a realistic ask of them to stop the raids? And if that doesn't happen, what is Plan B?
Well, let me just tell you that the alternative is to stay silent. And to me, I am going to continue to advocate on a federal level and look at the breadth and power that is represented here. You have over 30 leaders of cities, 30 cities joining together to talk about how this is impacting all of us. You know that in a year the World Cup is going to be here? 8 games. All of our cities are going to be involved in the World Cup. I know the president is excited about the World Cup and wants to be supportive of the World Cup. The best way to support the World Cup? In the raids, and frankly, share some of that financial support that you're giving unnecessarily to the military.
And do you have any plans if that doesn't happen? Or have you talked
that the raids don't end? Right. No. I mean, we are stuck in this no man's land of not having any idea when the policy will end.
We're going to Sean, and then we'll check things out.
Hi, Sean.
Back to the city's approach to the protests. And there's some pretty clear tonal differences between the way California leaders have been talking about these protests versus the ones in 2020 during the pandemic. And I'm wondering, sort of politically speaking, what would you say the biggest lesson is that you took from 2020 and the subsequent backlash?
Well, in all fairness, in 2020 I was in Congress and I was doing police reform on a national level, so I spent most of my time visiting other cities, so I can't comment about 2020 here.
Question to the mayor.
Sorry.
I was just wondering if you could quantify the impact the rates that continue going, whether it be culturally, financially, emotionally, to the whole LA system.
You know, we are trying to quantify that now, and I would invite the other mayors that have experienced raids, if they have quantified it now. But looking at police overtime, looking at the vandalism that took place in the downtown area and other areas, there was also, you know, the looting that took place on one night, or maybe it was 2 nights. All of that is going to be a cost. But you know, to me, there's also the human cost, the cost of these families being divided, for kids not knowing where their parents are, for kids and families being afraid to go to graduations. I had talked to a friend that went to the grocery store and the shelves were empty. Why? Because the immigrant labor didn't come to work. And this is an issue whether you are legal or not. You have people going to the immigration office for their annual check-ins that they're supposed to do with papers and going in and getting detained along with their families. So, you know, I think the cost has to be looked at comprehensively, not just to vandalism and police overtime, but the human cost to the disruption of these families.
Can I follow up on that? Like, there's shows out that the news are kind of the LA Opera, the Phil, and theaters that are having to be canceled, restaurants having to close early. Is there going to be any intervention to keep some of the money that they're losing?
Well, let me just say that the shows and all of that, I have not heard of one, but they are going to be accommodated. So the law enforcement knows that this is a major entertainment center and that, you know, shows are going to take place. So that will be accommodated.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
And mayors here are also available for one-on-one.
All right, looks like this press conference with leadership in LA and the LA area is wrapping up. As we just heard, many of the folks here at this press conference reference, including the mayor, the fact that they say that they are concerned with deployment of troops, various troops, as we've shared before here on Live Impact News, to the LA area to tackle these protests, which have cropped up in response to ICE raids. And just to kind of catch you up to speed briefly here, we saw as recently as last night more protests, more arrests made. In fact, the mayor referenced this. She said more than 100 people. We've been seeing elsewhere figures of more than 200 people arrested just yesterday. They had established a curfew, and there were folks who apparently did not disperse when they were told to, and that was the reason for those arrests. Meantime, 700 Marines activated to that area. They're still outside of LA. They're still undergoing training. And this is really just a big dialogue that we're seeing across the country right now, including in the Senate. So we've got here for you a new feed coming into Live Impact News. U.S. Senate Democratic Whip Dick Durbin is hosting this forum here. And it's essentially, he says that he's trying to look at the Trump administration's ongoing use, these are his words here, to describe this forum, of immigrants to attack what they're calling here the fundamental rights of all Americans. So we've got some testimony underway. Let's listen in right now.
The presidential memorandum does not refer to any particular ongoing protest in any particular location, not even Los Angeles, where the National Guard has now been federalized and deployed, nor does it provide any other support for such a conclusion. Instead, it purports to apply to protests that, quote, are occurring or are likely to occur based on current threat assessments and planned operations, unquote. And it gives the Secretary of the Defense the power to use regular armed forces to augment the National Guard, which the Secretary has now used to send 700 Marines into California. With the total number of federalized National Guard and Marines at 4,700, far outnumbering the most protesters that have been seen at any given protest. This assault on fundamental First Amendment rights of citizens and non-citizens is unprecedented, beyond the authority delegated by Congress and meant to quash protected speech. Next, consider the President's Alien Enemies Act proclamation, used to remove Venezuelan detainees alleged to be members of Tren de Aragua to Seacoast. Setting aside for now whether the Alien Enemies Act can be used in this way, all 9 members of the United States Supreme Court agreed that the detainees are constitutionally entitled to due process of law. That means notice that they are subject to removal under the Act within a reasonable time and in such a manner to allow them to seek judicial review before their removal occurs. The fundamental right to due process protects everyone, not just Venezuelan detainees, before the government deprives someone of life, liberty, or property. The administration's attempt to summarily remove other detainees to Libya and South Sudan and its mistaken removal of Kilmar Abrego Garcia without due process are additional violations of due process rights. The justifications given that detainees are terrorists or criminals is not an excuse. Indeed, the Fourth Circuit Judge J. Harvey Wilkinson III, writing about Abrego Garcia, cautioned, quote, if today the executive claims the right to deport without due process and in disregard of court orders, what assurance will there be tomorrow that it will not deport American citizens and then disclaim responsibility to bring them home? And this is not all. The administration has attempted to summarily strip foreign students and researchers of their visas for engaging in First Amendment protected activity on university campuses. It has threatened criminal investigations of so-called sanctuary cities that choose as a matter of public safety not to voluntarily cooperate with federal immigration officials beyond what is required by federal law. It has charged a state judge for allegedly obstructing ICE's attempt to arrest an immigrant appearing in her courtroom, and it has charged a U.S. Congress member with assaulting an ICE officer during attempted oversight at a detention center. These actions have consequential impacts on First Amendment rights, as well as principles of federalism, separation of powers, and the rule of law. Finally, no hearing on these topics would be complete without discussing President Trump's executive order purporting to reinterpret the 14th Amendment to deny citizenship to newborn children and list at least one parent as a citizen or a lawful permanent resident, even if both parents are here lawfully but temporarily. Denying citizenship to newborns would irreparably harm not only them and their families, who may face deportations and family separation, it would also impact newborns of U.S. citizens for whom a birth certificate would no longer be sufficient proof of citizenship. Immediate legal challenges, including one brought by my organization, ICAP, resulted in nationwide preliminary injunctions based on the order's blatant violation of the plain text of the 14th Amendment, 125-year-old binding Supreme Court precedent, a congressional statute, and centuries of historical practice. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
Thanks, Mr. Cord. Senator from California is recognized.
Thank you, Senator Durbin. I'm going to set the stage for my first question by sharing something that's probably not news to most people that are here in the room, but for the record, there has been an unprecedented number of arrests taking place over the last several weeks at immigration court dates, hearings, and regular check-ins. These arrests are specifically targeting immigrants who are trying to comply with our immigration laws, people who are showing up to have their day in court and present the evidence to a judge. This is the United States justice system, after all, where you get a fair shot to make your case in court. But instead, the Trump administration is sabotaging the right to due process. People who have active cases are having their cases totally dismissed, and when they walk out of that courtroom, ICE agents are waiting to arrest them and thrown into removal proceedings before they could ever make their case before a judge. This should raise alarm for everyone listening. People are being deprived of their day in court. This is no accident. It's a deliberate strategy to wash away the cornerstone of the U.S. Constitution just because due process is inconvenient for Trump's agenda. My question is for Ms. Brunet. How is this abuse of dismissals by ICE different from previous uses of dismissals, and is this a concerning change in practice, and why?
Thank you very much for the question. It is a drastic change from previous practice. So generally speaking, when a case is dismissed, that is seen as a finding that it's not worth pursuing, that the grounds that the government was charging may not be sufficient, or that you're going to provide the person with an opportunity to pursue another avenue. And so I think initially when people were receiving dismissals, there was some confusion or even sense of relief. I'll be able to pursue my asylum claim separately as an affirmative claim, perhaps. But instead, as you noted, people are immediately being arrested upon leaving the courtroom and charged with put through a different process of expedited removal, a faster sort of rocket docket of proceedings that provide less due process for people and don't provide them the opportunity to go through the process they had been prepared for. They're also resulting in these cases in immediate detentions, again, as you noted, upon leaving the courtroom. And many times this is resulting in separation from families, children who are present, and we're expecting to go through a normal process, and so are traumatized by the process.
So what do these actions suggest in terms of President Trump and his administration's respect for due process?
It's disrespect for due process and basically deciding not to follow the procedures that don't fit with their agenda and making up their own.
Thank you. Speaking of due process, when a president ignores court orders, detains people without hearings, and uses made-up emergencies to get around the law, it's not just about immigration enforcement anymore. It raises real concerns about whether the basic constitutional rules that protect all of us are being dismantled. And if President Trump can take those rights from people he views as the most vulnerable or politically unpopular, what's to stop him from coming after anybody else next? Question for Ms. McCourt. In your view, how do these due process violations fit into a larger pattern of the administration trying to put itself above the law? And what does that mean for the rights of U.S. citizens going forward?
Well, certainly I think what we've seen is an escalation in failing to follow the proper due process procedures, oftentimes in the name of national security. I would say hiding behind this guise of national security. Call people terrorists, call them criminals, and maybe Americans won't care. They can be deported without notice. No one is going to call their senators. No one's going to protest because they're terrorists and criminals. But the label terrorists and criminals does not mean a person is a terrorist or a criminal. And that's why judges across the country have found, including our U.S. Supreme Court, that due process is a fundamental right. It's what our system of laws is built on. It's critical to the rule of law. And that's why 9 members of the Supreme Court have agreed that due process.
Folks, we're going to move to our 3-box now because we have quite a few feeds that are now coming into the Live Impact News studio. Of course, we've now moved that Senate forum to the top right of your screen. We'll dip back in as appropriate. We've got the Karen Reed retrial, which looks like they've completed that sidebar. And so we're just going to watch that in the background as well. But we want to take you now to full here audio from St. Louis's officials, including the mayor there in St. Louis and a FEMA official are addressing the federal assistance that is now available for folks following the May 16th deadly and historic tornado for that area. So looks like folks can now start to apply for federal funding as survivors from that storm. Let's listen in now.
We're experiencing stuff like that right now in FEMA. However, we got good people who are out there on the ground that are here with me, the people that I'm going to bring in to help with that and work with the state and work with the great mayor. I think we're going to do good things.
Just to follow up on Mark's question, what would happen to communities like St. Louis if FEMA were faded out?
Well, I don't know the answer to that question, but I know this. This is what I do know. That early on, it was talked about eliminating FEMA totally. This hurricane season, we are operating along the same lines we did last hurricane season. Yes, FEMA will be looked at for efficiencies, how we can do things better, but that is yet to come out. But we are here today. We're here today to respond, to recover, transition to long-term recovery as best as we can.
Is having any issues making recommendations on Governor Kehoe's disaster request due to staffing and budget cuts?
Negative. Region 7 and the state of and the state of Missouri and the locals who support that, along with the federal agents like SBA, Red Cross, we get out and do those preliminary damage assessments really quick and write up those reports and then do that. So no, well, yes, it's always you do less with less, you get less with less. But we got hardworking people to do it.
I work closely with behavioral health response, and we've seen firsthand how urgently mental health support is needed across the community. Is the city open to continue or expand collaborations with DHR and local crisis response units? And what mental health infractions is being prioritized both now and moving forward?
The mental health toll is immeasurable. That's one of those things, you know, we're working hard to figure out the building damage, but the trauma that our communities are experiencing and will continue to experience in the coming days, weeks, months, years is truly something we couldn't even begin to quantify. We are open to continuing that work. I think, you know, to answer, I'll dovetail this into one of the questions I would have, it's hard for FEMA to answer the question, what would life look like without FEMA, because that's a difficult question to be asked in your shoes. I could tell you as a city, it would be devastating. You know, we have exhausted ourselves, our city workforce, the nonprofit, the community organizations are exhausted because we've been holding this disaster here locally with the help of our state partners. And with that, and having FEMA here, being on the ground, being able to help with that direct assistance to residents, helping them get into short and long-term housing is truly so very needed. We would be devastated without it. This hopefully will allow us some bandwidth to focus on some of those other human needs as we move through grounding FEMA, the SBA, and our federal partners into this team approach. We can start to better figure out some of those other pieces. We've been triaging the immediate necessary issues that we've been triaging, and this will hopefully free up some bandwidth to start to have some of those other long-term wellness conversations in the coming days and weeks ahead.
This center obviously provides a lot of resources for people, but we know a lot of people lost access to vehicles.
Yes.
Can you talk about the long-term commitment to providing ways for people to get to whether it's a FEMA center, an SBA center?
Sure. So we do have some long-term commitments on making sure folks can continue to get access to resources. Uber has stepped up. We are in continuous evaluation on making sure that we still have funds available for those. We're discussing whether or not what the options look like, but it's imperative that to be successful at delivering the resources, folks they have to be able to get to them. So we are committed to making sure that we have access to either the DACA or if we kind of mobilize in smaller units, whatever that looks like. We're very committed to making sure people have the transportation access to get to their resources.
Once again, you're telling people really to go online.
Go online or call, but the FEMA, you mean to register to come here or to register for FEMA? For FEMA, absolutely. I mean, that is just imperative. There is a timeline there. There are requirements that you get that application done. So we're just saying do it today, do it as soon as you can, make sure that you have the resources available, your name, your social security number, etc., and be ready to accept the call to have that housing unit inspected.
This is redundant. You might have already alluded to this, but should the public expect to encounter a FEMA person here?
Yes. We're working on making sure that happens. And there are already applications available. We were inside earlier. People were filling them out, making sure that we're getting those resources in the hands of the folks who show up here.
I had a question.
Yeah.
So, in 4293 Sanders Avenue, I was born and raised at the house. The bricks are still falling. The man that owned the church is complaining about the bricks on the lot.
Mm-hmm.
And my father's deceased. But we have a will, and I was saying, if you have the will and you lost the house of disaster, and then we had the house for 56 years, could we still apply for FEMA?
If you have been impacted by the tornado, in any way, shape, or form, please apply for FEMA. So yes, I think what FEMA can do
We're having issues with this shot. We apologize. We're going to turn from St. Louis now here on Live Impact News back to that Senate subcommittee forum. You can see Senator Dick Durbin there. This is once again a forum that is meant to explore the Trump administration's encounters with immigrants. And as we've been hearing some testimony, some people here on this forum are saying that the use of immigrants, really, they're being used to attack the fundamental rights of Americans. That is their characterization. So we got Cory Booker speaking right now. Let's listen in.
That violates our morals and our ideals, that is an attack on our Constitution, that is bringing chaos, corruption, and cruelty to the fore in the United States. I'm grateful to hear the comments by my colleagues and the responses that have been given by our witnesses today, but let's just be clear. The deployment of the National Guard and military troops was an unlawful exercise of authority. It was an action that is provocative and creating more of a crisis than it is solving, when even the police leader of Los Angeles is saying that this makes it harder for them to do their job, is a testimony to Donald Trump's end not being strength in our streets, security in our streets. It is a testimony to what he's really trying to do, is create more and more of a provocation and more of a cause for him to violate our laws. Just last month, we know that Los Angeles is not an isolated incident, because all around the country we're seeing outrageous flaunting of the law. Just last month, the DOJ took the unprecedented step of arresting the mayor of my city, Newark, New Jersey, outside an immigration detention center. The DOJ charged a United States Congresswoman, LaMonica McIver, who was exercising her congressional oversight authority to inspect that detention facility. And as people rushed out, agents rushed out to wrongfully arrest a mayor, catching her up in the process, and now they're bringing charges against her. Trump brought us to the precipice of a constitutional crisis when he deported more than 250 people to an El Salvadorian prison under the Alien Enemies Act without allowing them to appear before the judge, 50 of whom came into this country legally. And when a unanimous Supreme Court ordered him to bring back the individuals who, by the government's own admissions, had been mistakenly deported home to avail himself of the constitutional mandated process he was entitled to, the president refused to comply. The price that we are paying right now is immeasurable, but I see it all around New Jersey. Our streets are less safe. Our economy is being severely hit. We have victims of crimes who are afraid to come forward to bear witness against the person who victimized them. We are seeing law enforcement resources invaluable to stopping crime being pulled away from other agencies and directed to the invasion of schools and courts, as we've just heard, to tearing apart the fabric of our community, not to get criminals, not to get violent gang members, but to separate families and to, in so many instances, truly undermine the very people who give strength to our communities and our neighborhoods. And so I am doing what my other colleagues are doing. We need to sound the alarm. This is not isolated pockets of activity. This is a larger, comprehensive effort to go through that is trying to undermine our Constitution, our values, and slip us further and further towards authoritarian rule. And so I want to ask again, and I think it's really important, Ms. McCord, the legal work that you're involved in, and I just want to just to clarify this point I made about the declaring of national emergencies that are being done. First of all, the circumstances in Los Angeles and early Saturday, there was no clear following of the rule, and I think it's Title 10, Section 12406. It is a clear, if you read that statute, violation to be sending in the National Guard around the governor's office, correct?
Excuse me, the statute requires that orders to federalize the National Guard must be issued through the governor, and at least based on the governor's allegations in the lawsuit, he was bypassed.
and then I want to be respectful to my colleagues because my time is pretty much out, but for Americans to think that a president who violates the laws and the rights of marginalized people, that does not implicate them and their constitutional rights, could you do me a favor when it comes to using trumped up reasons to declare national emergencies? If the president continues in this way, there are over 150 powers that become available to him, including things like suspending the Clean Air Act or taking possessions of certain lands for war purposes or shutting down domestic transportation. There's a scenario, do you think, where the president could declare an emergency and postpone or delay an election even? Is that correct?
Well, that's untested, but the emergency powers are capacious. I don't think Congress ever intended them to be that capacious, but this is, I think, an important point, as you indicate, because this is not all about non-citizens, right? This is about the impact of presidential action on all of us, including citizens, and our rights, our constitutional rights, including the right to vote.
And that's what I want to conclude on. Again, the courage, again, of Ms. Arias Cristobal, it's extraordinary. You are an extraordinary American, showing extraordinary courage. But I think the point I want to drive home here is if we do not show public outrage, he will continue to push to get away with things. That's why a lot of people that he has arrested and detained have been released actually because of the public outrage. This is a man that is saying it is unpatriotic, un-American to protest. When a president is violating the Constitution and the law of the land, to be silent is what is un-American. Patriotic is to show, being patriotic in a time like this is to show dissent, peaceful, lawful, but dissent is necessary if we are going to stop this president from his continued encroachments into the constitutional violations that he's doing. So I appreciate that. Thank you for the indulgence in that of my colleagues.
Thanks, Senator Booker. Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this hearing, and thanks to my colleagues from California for speaking with such moral clarity, and to Senator Booker for what he has said just now. And I think that we should all agree that silence is complicity. We have an obligation to speak out, stand up. Otherwise, all of our rights will be in jeopardy. And of course, none of us sympathize with any form of violence. We believe peaceful protest is a form of free expression. It's deeply rooted in our law as well as our tradition. And defending that right to peaceful protest, not violence, is woven into the fabric of our laws. What's happening here is that in many respects, the president is taking advantage of loopholes and somewhat vaguely written sections of the law relating to insurrection. And I believe that we ought to tighten those laws. That's the reason that I will be introducing tomorrow morning an insurrection reform bill with the support of Senators Schiff and Padilla, as well as others who are on the Judiciary Committee and the Armed Services Committee, because actually Title 10 is an armed services title because it affects the powers of our armed services, and I think that it needs to be reformed. But I want to focus for the moment on the due process issue here, and to ask Ms. McCord, you know, I have been absolutely struck by the Kilmar-Abrego-Garcia case. Whether he's a citizen or not, he's entitled to due process, correct?
That's right, Senator.
And the United States Supreme Court basically said the government of the United States should facilitate his return, correct?
That's correct, Senator.
And then for 2 months, the United States Supreme Court was defied by the government of the United States. isn't that contempt of court?
Well, this is what I know Judge Zenas is looking into in Maryland, and the government has made various arguments along the way. It has withheld some supposed evidence that would go to this question of whether it was actually in contempt, which of course comes down to whether the United States government had the power and the authority to get Mr. Abrego Garcia back. He is now back. They had that power and authority.
And they have the power to bring back others who have been deported illegally as well, correct?
This experience certainly seems to say that.
I can't help but quote Judge Harvey Wilkinson, whom you cite in your testimony, because as we all know, Harvey Wilkinson is not exactly a left-leaning, sort of wild-eyed liberal judge, and he said, quote, if today the executive claims the right to deport without due process and in disregard of court orders, what assurance will there be tomorrow that it will not deport American citizens and then disclaim responsibility to bring them home? That's why silence is complicity, in my view. I want to turn to another area. Ms. Bernay, you worked with my office on the separation policy of the Trump administration in its first term. And my understanding is that a lot of those kids who were separated from their parents are still separated. Do you have an estimate as to how many are still without reuniting with their parents?
Thank you for that question, sir. We did indeed work together before I went into the administration. It's a tricky question for me to answer very specifically right now because I don't have a lot of those numbers in front of me anymore. But we did reunify over 800 of the children that were still separated when I entered as the director of the Family Reunification Task Force. We also identified up to 1,000 additional children that had not been documented. Many of those children, we continue to have no record on whether they were reunified or not. So it is possible that they found their way together, as many did, because they weren't waiting around for the government to do that for them. But it is very possible that many of those families are still separated, and we will never know the real answer.
My time has expired, but I just want to comment finally. In the annals of American governmental injustices, the family separation policy will go down as one of the most cruel and reckless and irresponsible, to separate children from their parents and then to reunite them only reluctantly and only after vast damage was done to those children through trauma and sometimes physical injury, and to leave many children still separated is absolutely the height of cruelty and lack of due process. So I think we need to be on guard against a repetition of that policy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. Senator Schiff of California.
Thank you, Senator Durbin, for holding this very important hearing. As we undertake this hearing today in my hometown of Los Angeles, there are thousands of California National Guard that have been federalized over the opposition of the governor. There are hundreds of Marines who've been mobilized. And the predicament that we are in Los Angeles, in my view, all goes back to a foundational lie of the Trump campaign. And it was really the original lie of the Trump campaign, and one that he spoke as he descended that golden escalator as he ran for his first term, in which he pejoratized everyone coming to this country as an immigrant or a migrant, as some kind of a murderer or a rapist or a violent criminal. The reality is, of course, that people that immigrate and migrate to this country have a lower crime rate than people who are born here. But that foundational lie is at the heart of where we are today. The president promised in this most recent campaign that he would focus on deporting violent criminals. He also promised mass deportations. And the only way you can square those two things is going back to that foundational lie. The idea that the mass of people that come here as migrants and immigrants are somehow violent criminals. But of course, that's not the case. And so what the administration has resorted to is not an effort to look for people who have violated the law in a violent way, but rather to engage in these broad sweeps of people, targeting people at their workplaces, going to elementary and middle schools, separating parents from their children. I sat down with the children of farm workers whose fathers had been deported away from them, who were stopped at random traffic stops. Often the ICE officers said they were looking for someone else than the person they pulled over, but it didn't matter. And indeed, increasingly we see U.S. citizens among those who are swept up because of their ethnic origin, who often have to spend days in custody before they can prove their U.S. citizenship and be released. But compounding the inhumanity of the execution of this policy and the defamation of everyone who's ever come to this country as an immigrant or migrant, you now have the administration's abuse of the military, something we haven't seen before in this country, not in this manner. There have been other occasions back in the 1960s when a president has countermanded a governor and federalized a guard, but that was to integrate schools over a segregationist governor's opposition. We've never seen anything like this, let alone the mobilization of Marines to deal with violent agitators who have, like a moth to the flame, gone to peaceful protest to create havoc and engaged in acts of vandalism and assaults on law enforcement for which they should be arrested and prosecuted. Violence has no place in any of this. But by federalizing the Guard, what the president is doing is seeking to inflame the public, seeking to stir up even more chaos to justify even more harsh of a response. This is classic Donald Trump creating a crisis so that he can attempt to ride in and pretend that he is riding to the rescue to solve the problem he has created. But of course, what is left in the wake is the shattering of so many lives of people whose families have been separated from one another. To me, among the most heartbreaking stories was that of a California middle schooler who goes to an immigration appointment with his father, and the father is grabbed at the immigration appointment and deported away from his son. And you see this happen, you wonder, what country are we watching? Or you witness in Massachusetts, masked ICE agents chasing a mother and separating her from her daughter. This is not who we are. I don't believe this is what people voted for. I think people voted for a secure border, which is important. I think people voted to deport people who are violent and commit violent acts in this country. They didn't vote to separate children from their parents. They didn't vote to militarize domestic law enforcement. They didn't vote to violate the Constitution and the law. They didn't vote for dictatorship or the road to authoritarianism. They didn't vote for any of this. They voted for lower prices, and they haven't gotten it. Instead, they've gotten this. And I'm so grateful for your testimony, for putting a human face on the inhumanity of this policy. I'm grateful for all of your advocacy. They're targeting advocacy organizations. They're targeting anyone who speaks out in opposition to their harsh policies. And, Mr. Chairman, I've already exceeded my time, but would you permit me one question, Mr. Chairman?
Only one.
Only one. Okay. Well, I would ask this because I think at the heart of what we're seeing in Los Angeles is not just an attack on immigrant communities, an attack on people who are vulnerable, but also an attack on our democracy, the militarization of our democracy. And so, Ms. McCourt, if I could ask you, There are laws like the Posse Comitatus law that say you can't use the military for domestic law enforcement. What are the reasons behind those laws? Why don't we want the military to be engaged in garden variety law enforcement?
This goes back to the founding, Senator. This is a country that was founded on the principle that we did not want our military engaging in domestic law enforcement.